Have you ever had a day where everything feels heavier than it should, where your mind is tired, your heart feels quiet, and even simple things suddenly feel difficult? Maybe life has not gone the way you expected. Maybe someone hurt you. Maybe you feel lost, exhausted, or silently overwhelmed by everything happening around you. And in moments like these, the world keeps moving while your heart feels like it needs to stop and breathe. But thousands of years ago, the Buddha spoke about these exact moments. He understood that life can feel painful, confusing, and deeply unfair. Yet he also revealed something powerful. The moments when you feel the most lost are often the moments when the greatest clarity is waiting to appear. So if today feels heavy, if your mind feels restless, if your heart feels tired, then stay with this message, because what you are about to hear may be exactly what your soul needed today. 1. Pain is part of life, but suffering is created by the mind. One of the most powerful truths the Buddha shared is that pain is a natural part of life, but suffering is something the mind often creates on its own. Every human being experiences pain at some point. There will be moments of loss, rejection, disappointment, and uncertainty. Plans fail, people leave. Situations change in ways we did not expect. These experiences are not signs that something is wrong with your life. They are simply part of being human. But the deeper suffering we feel usually comes from how our mind reacts to these events. When something painful happens, the mind immediately begins creating stories around it. It starts asking questions like, "Why did this happen to me?" or "Why is my life harder than others?" Sometimes it begins comparing your life to the lives of other people. You see others smiling, succeeding, or appearing happy, and your mind convinces you that everyone else is doing better than you. These thoughts make the pain feel even heavier. The event itself may hurt, but the mind keeps repeating the story again and again, making the suffering grow stronger. Buddhist wisdom teaches that a large part of our suffering comes from resisting what has already happened. The mind fights reality. It wishes things were different. It keeps replaying the past or worrying about the future. But the moment we stop fighting reality, something surprising begins to happen inside us. A quiet calm starts to appear. The situation may still be difficult, but the mind stops adding extra weight to it. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" you begin to say, "This is a difficult moment, but it is part of life, and I will move through it." This small change in perspective can transform how you experience hardship. The moment you stop arguing with reality, you take back your inner power. Life may still bring challenges, but your mind becomes steadier and stronger. You begin to understand that pain comes and goes, just like seasons in nature, and learning to remain calm during those painful seasons is the beginning of true inner freedom. 2. Your thoughts are not always the truth. When life feels difficult, the mind often becomes very noisy. Thoughts begin to rush in quickly, and many of them are negative. The mind may tell you that nothing will get better, that you are not strong enough, or that you are failing in life. When you hear these thoughts again and again, it is easy to believe them. They start to feel like facts. But one of the important teachings in Buddhism is that thoughts are not always the truth. They are simply mental events that appear and disappear inside the mind. The problem is that most people treat every thought as if it must be believed. When a fearful thought appears, they immediately accept it as reality. When the mind predicts failure, they start to feel defeated even before anything has actually happened. But the Buddha encouraged people to observe their thoughts instead of blindly following them. Just because a thought appears in your mind does not mean it represents the truth about your life. Think of your thoughts like clouds moving across the sky. Some clouds are dark and heavy, while others are light and calm, but none of them stay forever. In the same way, thoughts come and go throughout the day. A negative thought may appear for a moment, but if you do not hold on to it, it will slowly pass. When you learn to observe your thoughts instead of reacting to them, you create space inside your mind. Instead of being controlled by every negative idea, you become aware that you are the one watching those thoughts. This awareness gives you freedom. You begin to understand that your mind can produce many stories, but you do not have to believe all of them. The more you practice this awareness, the calmer your mind becomes. Difficult thoughts may still appear, but they lose their power over you. And in that quiet space of awareness, you begin to discover a deeper sense of peace that is not controlled by the constant movement of the mind. 3. Everything in life is temporary. One of the most comforting and powerful teachings in Buddhism is the truth that everything in life is temporary. Nothing in this world stays the same forever. Joy changes, sadness changes, situations change, and even the person you are today will not be exactly the same in the future. This idea may sound simple at first, but when you truly understand it, it can completely change the way you experience difficult moments. When life feels heavy, the mind often tricks us into believing that the pain will last forever. When you are struggling, a small problem can start to feel like a permanent reality. You may think that the sadness you feel today will always stay with you, or that the situation you are facing will never improve. But if you look at your life honestly, you will notice that this has never been true. Your life has already changed many times. Think about the problems you had 5 or 10 years ago. At that time, they may have felt overwhelming. You may have believed that those struggles would define your entire future. But today, many of those problems have already disappeared, and your life has continued moving forward. New experiences came, new people entered your life, and new opportunities appeared. What once felt permanent slowly faded away. This is the nature of life. Everything moves, everything changes, nothing stays fixed forever. The Buddha described this truth as impermanence. Every moment is constantly transforming. Just like the seasons change from winter to spring, your life also moves through different phases. Sometimes there are peaceful and joyful periods, and sometimes there are difficult and confusing ones. But neither of these states lasts forever. Understanding this truth can bring great comfort during hard times. When you realize that everything is temporary, you stop feeling trapped by the present moment. You begin to see that the pain you are experiencing right now is not your final destination. It is simply a chapter in a much larger story. This understanding also teaches us not to panic when life becomes difficult. Instead of reacting with fear, you begin to trust that change is always happening. Just as night slowly turns into morning, difficult moments eventually pass and new possibilities appear. At the same time, this lesson encourages us to appreciate the good moments when they arrive. Because just as pain is temporary, happiness is also temporary. A peaceful evening, a meaningful conversation, a quiet moment of calm. These experiences are precious because they do not last forever. When you understand impermanence, you learn to value the present moment more deeply. Many people suffer because they try to hold on to things that cannot stay. They try to control every situation, every relationship, and every outcome. But life cannot be controlled in that way. The more tightly we try to hold on to things, the more tension and fear we create inside ourselves. Buddhism teaches us a different approach. Instead of trying to freeze life in place, we learn to flow with its changes. We accept that people may come and go, circumstances may rise and fall, success may appear and disappear. But through all these changes, our inner awareness can remain steady. When you truly understand that everything is temporary, something beautiful happens inside your mind. You stop clinging so tightly to what you cannot control. You stop panicking when life becomes uncertain. You begin to trust the natural movement of existence. And in that trust, a quiet peace begins to grow. Even when life feels difficult, you remind yourself that this moment will not last forever. Just like every storm eventually passes, the challenges you face today will also move through your life and fade into the past. So when you are feeling down, remember this simple truth. This moment is not permanent. Your story is still unfolding. Change is always happening, even when you cannot see it yet. And sometimes the next chapter of your life is quietly preparing itself while you are still walking through the darkness of the current one. 4. Your value does not depend on other people. One of the deepest reasons people feel hurt, insecure, or emotionally exhausted is because they unknowingly tie their self-worth to the opinions and behavior of others. Many people spend their lives trying to be liked, accepted, respected, or chosen. They want people to approve of them, appreciate them, and treat them with importance. At first, this may seem normal, because human beings naturally want connection. But when your entire sense of value depends on how others treat you, your peace becomes very fragile. Think about how often people feel good or bad about themselves simply because of someone else's reaction. A single compliment can make someone feel confident for hours. A small criticism can ruin their entire day. A delayed reply to a message can create anxiety. Someone ignoring them can make them feel unimportant. This happens because the mind begins to measure its value through external approval. But the Buddha taught something very powerful. Your worth does not come from the opinions of others. It does not come from how many people like you, how many people support you, or how many people choose you. Your value exists independently of these things. Other people's behavior often reflects their own thoughts, emotions, fears, and struggles. Sometimes people act cold because they are dealing with their own pain. Sometimes people criticize others because they feel insecure about themselves. Sometimes people ignore kindness simply because they are distracted by their own problems. When you understand this, you begin to see that other people's actions are not always a reflection of your value. The problem is that the mind takes everything personally. When someone rejects you, the mind says, "I must not be good enough." When someone leaves your life, the mind says, "There must be something wrong with me." But this is often an illusion created by the ego and fear. People enter and leave each other's lives for many different reasons, and those reasons are rarely as simple as our minds imagine. Buddhism teaches us to build our sense of worth from within, rather than borrowing it from the outside world. When your value comes from inside you, it becomes stable and unshakable. You no longer depend on constant validation from others to feel secure. You can appreciate kindness and connection when they appear, but your peace does not collapse when they disappear. This inner stability grows when you begin focusing on developing qualities that truly matter. Instead of trying to impress everyone, you focus on becoming a better version of yourself. You cultivate patience, compassion, discipline, and wisdom. These qualities are not dependent on anyone else's approval. They come from your own choices and actions. When you start living this way, something interesting happens. You stop chasing people who do not respect you. You stop exhausting yourself trying to prove your worth. You stop begging for attention from those who cannot see your value. Instead, you become comfortable standing in your own presence. The Buddha encouraged people to become their own refuge. This means learning to stand firmly within your own awareness rather than constantly searching for approval outside yourself. When your happiness depends completely on the reactions of others, your emotional life becomes unstable. But when your peace comes from within, you gain a kind of freedom that cannot easily be shaken. This does not mean you stop caring about people or become emotionally distant. It simply means that you stop measuring your worth through their behavior. You can love people without losing yourself. You can care about others without sacrificing your inner stability. Many people spend years trying to be accepted by everyone around them, But this is impossible. No matter who you are, some people will misunderstand you, some will disagree with you, some will walk away from your life. This is not a failure, it is simply the nature of human relationships. When you truly accept this, a great weight begins to lift from your heart. You no longer feel the need to please everyone. You no longer feel controlled by every opinion or criticism. Instead, you begin to focus on living in alignment with your own values and intentions. And when you live this way, something beautiful happens. Your confidence grows quietly, your mind becomes calmer, your relationships become healthier because they are no longer built on fear or dependency. You realize that your value was never something other people had the power to give or take away. It was always something that existed within you from the beginning. 5. Difficult moments are often hidden teachers. When life becomes painful, most people immediately see the situation as something purely negative. They wish it had never happened. They ask themselves why life is being unfair. In those moments, it is very difficult to imagine that the struggle could hold any value at all. But one of the quiet truths found in Buddhist wisdom is that many of life's hardest moments are actually powerful teachers in disguise. Painful experiences force us to look deeper into ourselves. When everything in life is comfortable, the mind becomes relaxed and often careless. We move through life without questioning our habits, our beliefs, or our direction. But when something difficult happens, it shakes us awake. It forces us to pause and reflect. Suddenly, we begin asking important questions about our lives, our decisions, and the way we see the world. Think about how people grow through challenges. A person who has never faced hardship may not fully understand patience or resilience, but someone who has struggled and survived begins to develop inner strength that cannot be easily shaken. Difficult moments slowly build qualities like courage, humility, wisdom, and compassion. The Buddha taught that suffering can become a doorway to awakening when we are willing to learn from it. Instead of simply seeing pain as punishment, we can begin to see it as an opportunity for growth. This does not mean that suffering is easy or enjoyable. Pain is still painful, but when we face it with awareness, it begins to shape us in powerful ways. Many of the strongest people you will ever meet did not become strong during easy periods of life. Their strength was built through difficult experiences. They learned how to remain calm when things went wrong. They learned how to stand back up after falling. They learned how to adapt when life did not follow their plans. In the same way, your current struggles may be shaping parts of your character that you cannot yet see. Sometimes a difficult situation teaches you patience. Sometimes it teaches you to let go of attachments. Sometimes it teaches you that you are far stronger than you believed. And sometimes it teaches you to stop chasing things that were never meant for you. Pain also deepens our understanding of others. When someone has experienced struggle, they become more compassionate toward the struggles of other people. They learn to listen more carefully. They become more patient and less judgmental. In this way, suffering can open the heart rather than harden it. Another powerful lesson hidden in difficult moments is clarity. When life becomes challenging, it often reveals what truly matters. Things that once seemed important may suddenly feel meaningless. Small arguments, social pressures, and unnecessary distractions begin to lose their power. You start focusing on what truly brings meaning and peace into your life. Many people discover their purpose through hardship. A difficult experience may push someone to change their direction, develop a new skill, or pursue something that they would never have considered before. What once looked like a setback can quietly become the beginning of a new path. This is why Buddhism encourages us to look at suffering with curiosity instead of immediate rejection. Instead of asking only, "Why is this happening to me?" we can also ask, "What is this experience trying to teach me?" Sometimes the answer appears slowly. The lesson may not be clear right away, but with time and reflection, the wisdom hidden inside the experience begins to reveal itself. It is important to remember that difficult moments are not meant to destroy you. They are part of the process of shaping your character and strengthening your mind. Just like a piece of metal becomes stronger when it passes through fire, human beings often become wiser and more resilient after facing hardship. So, when you find yourself in a painful period of life, try to see it with a different perspective. Instead of believing that life is only working against you, consider the possibility that life may also be teaching you something valuable. The lesson may be patience. It may be letting go. It may be discovering your inner strength. And one day, when you look back at the struggles you once feared, you may realize that those difficult moments quietly transformed you into a stronger, wiser, and more compassionate person. 6. Peace is found in the present moment. When life feels overwhelming, the mind rarely stays in the moment you are actually living. Instead, it constantly travels between the past and the future. It replays old mistakes, painful memories, and regrets from years ago. At the same time, it imagines future problems that may never even happen. This endless movement of the mind creates anxiety, stress, and emotional exhaustion. The Buddha taught that most human suffering is created by this restless movement of the mind. We spend so much time thinking about what has already happened or worrying about what might happen that we completely lose connection with the present moment. Yet the present moment is the only place where life is truly happening. Think about how often the mind returns to the past. It may replay a conversation that went wrong. It may remember a failure, a regret, or something you wish you had done differently. Even though those moments are gone, the mind keeps bringing them back, making you relive the pain again and again. But no matter how much you think about the past, you cannot change it. It exists only as memory. At the same time, the mind constantly jumps into the future. It imagines worst-case scenarios. It worries about problems that might happen tomorrow, next week, or next year. The mind tries to control things that have not even occurred yet. This creates fear and tension inside the body, even though the imagined situation may never actually take place. Because of this, many people live almost entirely inside their thoughts instead of inside their real lives. Buddhism offers a simple but powerful solution. Return to the present moment. The present moment is where peace exists. Right now, in this very second, you are breathing. Your heart is beating. Life is moving through you. The air is entering your lungs and leaving again. The sounds around you are real. The ground beneath you is real. This moment is alive. When you gently bring your attention to the present moment, something remarkable begins to happen. The mind slows down. The endless stream of worries begins to soften. Your breathing becomes calmer. Your body begins to relax. This is why meditation and mindful breathing are such important practices in Buddhism. They are simple ways of returning to the present moment. When you focus on your breath, even for a few minutes, you interrupt the cycle of overthinking. Instead of being lost in thoughts, you reconnect with the experience of being alive right now. Peace is not something that exists far away in the future. Many people believe they will finally feel calm once they solve all their problems, achieve success, or gain complete control over their lives. But life will always contain uncertainty. There will always be new challenges waiting ahead. If peace depended on perfect conditions, no one would ever experience it. The Buddha taught that peace comes from learning how to remain present with life exactly as it is. This does not mean ignoring problems or pretending everything is perfect. It simply means not allowing the mind to run endlessly into fear and regret. When you return to the present moment, even difficult situations become easier to handle. Instead of feeling crushed by everything that might happen in the future, you deal with what is actually happening right now. And very often, the present moment is far less overwhelming than the stories the mind creates about it. For example, when you feel anxious about the future, try to pause and notice your breath. Feel the air entering your lungs. Notice the simple act of breathing. In that moment, the mind begins to settle. The body remembers that it is safe right now. This simple awareness may seem small, but it is incredibly powerful. Each time you return to the present moment, you train your mind to become calmer and more stable. Over time, this practice strengthens your ability to stay grounded even during difficult periods of life. The present moment also reminds us to appreciate the quiet beauty that exists around us. A gentle breeze, the warmth of sunlight, the sound of birds, the feeling of calm breathing, these small experiences are always available, but we often miss them because our minds are too busy worrying. When you slow down and truly experience the present moment, life begins to feel richer and more peaceful. Problems may still exist, but they no longer control your entire emotional state. The Buddha once taught that peace is not something we find by running away from life. It is something we discover by being fully present within it. So when life feels heavy and your mind becomes overwhelmed, remember this simple practice. Return to the present moment. Take a slow breath. Feel your body. Notice the life moving inside you. Because right here, in this moment, peace is still possible. 6. Peace is found in the present moment. When life becomes overwhelming, the mind almost never stays in the moment you are actually living. Instead, it constantly travels between two places that do not truly exist anymore or have not yet happened, the past and the future. It revisits old memories, past mistakes, painful conversations, regrets, and things you wish you had done differently. At the same time, it imagines possible problems waiting in the future. It predicts failure, rejection, disappointment, or loss. This endless movement of the mind creates anxiety, emotional pressure, and deep mental exhaustion. The Buddha observed this pattern thousands of years ago. He noticed that people were rarely suffering only because of what was happening in front of them. Most of their suffering was created by their thoughts about what already happened or what might happen next. The mind becomes like a restless traveler, constantly leaving the present moment and wandering into imaginary worlds. Think about how often your mind returns to the past. Perhaps you remember a mistake you made years ago. Maybe you replay an argument with someone and imagine what you should have said instead. Sometimes the mind brings back painful memories of rejection, embarrassment, or loss. Even though those events are over and cannot be changed, the mind keeps replaying them like a movie that never stops. Each time the memory appears, the emotional pain returns again. But the past exists only as memory. It is no longer real. No matter how many times the mind revisits it, it cannot change what already happened. Yet many people spend years mentally living in moments that are already gone. At the same time, the mind constantly rushes into the future. It worries about problems that might appear tomorrow or next month. It imagines worst-case scenarios. It creates fears about things that may never actually happen. Someone may worry about losing their job, losing a relationship, failing in their goals, or facing situations they cannot control. This constant worrying about the future creates tension inside the body. The heart beats faster, the breathing becomes shallow, the mind becomes restless and tired. But the strange thing is that most of these imagined problems never actually occur. Because of this, many people spend their lives mentally trapped between past regret and future fear, while completely missing the only moment that truly exists, the present moment. Buddhism offers a simple but incredibly powerful solution to this problem. Return your awareness to the present moment. The present moment is the only place where life is actually happening. Right now, in this exact moment, you are breathing. Your heart is beating, air is entering your lungs and leaving again. The ground beneath you is supporting your body. Sounds are moving through the air around you. Life is unfolding right now. When you gently bring your attention back to the present moment, something remarkable begins to happen inside the mind. The endless stream of thoughts starts to slow down. The pressure of worry begins to soften. Your breathing becomes deeper and calmer. Your body begins to relax. This is why mindfulness and meditation are such central practices in Buddhism. These practices are not complicated techniques meant only for monks or spiritual masters. They are simple ways of returning your attention to the present moment. For example, one of the simplest practices is mindful breathing. You pause for a moment and notice your breath. You feel the air entering your nose, filling your lungs, and leaving your body again. You do not try to control the breath. You simply observe it. In doing this, your awareness returns to the present moment. Even a few minutes of mindful breathing can interrupt the cycle of overthinking. Instead of being trapped inside endless thoughts, you reconnect with the direct experience of being alive. The Buddha often reminded his students that peace is not something we must search for in distant places. It is something we rediscover when the mind stops wandering. Many people believe that peace will arrive someday in the future. They think they will finally feel calm once they solve all their problems, achieve success, or gain control over their circumstances. They imagine that peace will come after they reach a certain level of wealth, recognition, or stability. But life rarely becomes perfectly stable. New challenges always appear. Situations constantly change. If peace depended on perfect conditions, almost no one would ever experience it. The Buddha taught that peace comes from learning how to remain present with life exactly as it is. This does not mean pretending that problems do not exist. It simply means not allowing the mind to create endless stories about them. When you focus on the present moment, problems become easier to handle. Instead of being overwhelmed by everything that might happen in the future, you deal with what is actually happening right now. And very often, the present moment is much calmer than the fearful stories the mind creates. For example, when you feel anxious about something in the future, pause and notice your breath. Feel your chest rising and falling. Feel your feet touching the ground. Look around and notice the space you are in. In that moment, you may realize that right now, in this exact second, you are safe and alive. This simple awareness begins to calm the nervous system. The body relaxes. The mind becomes clearer. You begin to realize that many of your worries exist only inside your thoughts. Returning to the present moment also allows you to appreciate the quiet beauty of ordinary life. A gentle breeze moving through the air, the warmth of sunlight on your skin, the sound of birds in the distance, the feeling of calm breathing. These simple experiences often go unnoticed because the mind is too busy thinking about problems. But when you become present, these small moments begin to feel meaningful again. Life becomes richer and more peaceful, even without dramatic changes in your circumstances. Over time, practicing presence strengthens the mind. You become less reactive and more aware. Difficult thoughts may still appear, but they no longer control you in the same way. You begin to see thoughts simply as passing mental events rather than absolute truths. This awareness creates inner stability. Instead of being pulled constantly into worry and regret, your mind learns to remain grounded. The Buddha once explained that the mind is like a wild elephant when it is not trained. It runs everywhere, chasing every thought and emotion. But with patience and awareness, the mind can become calm and steady. Each time you return to the present moment, you are gently training your mind. You are teaching it to settle instead of wandering endlessly. And slowly, you begin to discover something beautiful. Peace was never something far away. It was always hidden inside the present moment. So when life feels heavy and your mind becomes overwhelmed with thoughts, remember this simple practice. Pause for a moment. Take a slow breath. Feel the air entering and leaving your body. Notice that you are here, alive, breathing, because right here, in this moment, peace still exists. 7. You are stronger than you realize. When life becomes difficult, one of the first things that changes is the way you see yourself. Challenges have a strange way of making the mind doubt its own strength. When problems appear one after another, the mind begins whispering dangerous ideas. It says, "I can't handle this." It says, "This is too much for me." It says, "Maybe I am not strong enough to move forward." These thoughts feel very real in difficult moments, and if you listen to them long enough, you may begin to believe them. But Buddhism teaches a powerful truth that many people forget during hard times. The strength you need already exists inside you. It may feel hidden, buried under fear, stress, or exhaustion, but it is there. Every human being carries a deep inner resilience that often only reveals itself during the moments when life becomes most challenging. Think about your own life for a moment. There were days in your past when you felt completely overwhelmed. There may have been moments when you believed you would not be able to continue. Maybe you faced heartbreak, failure, loss, or deep uncertainty. At that time, the situation may have felt unbearable. You may have thought that you would never recover from it. Yet somehow, you continued. You woke up the next day. You kept moving forward. You survived moments that once seemed impossible to survive. Even if the journey was slow and painful, you are still here today. That alone is evidence of your strength. The mind often forgets these victories. It remembers the pain, but it forgets the resilience that carried you through it. Buddhism encourages us to recognize this hidden strength instead of constantly focusing on our weaknesses. The Buddha understood that the human mind has enormous potential. He taught that every person has the ability to cultivate awareness, patience, compassion, and inner stability. These qualities are not reserved for monks or spiritual masters. They exist within every human being. But these qualities do not grow during comfortable times. They grow during challenges. Imagine a tree standing in a quiet valley. If the tree never experienced strong winds, its roots would remain shallow. It would grow easily, but it would also remain fragile. The first powerful storm might break it, but a tree that grows in difficult conditions develops deep roots. It learns to bend with the wind instead of breaking. Over time, those storms make the tree stronger and more stable. Human beings grow in a similar way. Difficult moments force the mind to develop deeper emotional roots. They teach patience. They build resilience. They reveal strengths that would never appear during comfortable periods of life. Many people believe that strong individuals are those who never struggle, but this is an illusion. The strongest people are often those who have faced the greatest difficulties and learned how to continue walking forward despite them. Strength is not the absence of pain. Strength is the ability to remain standing even when life becomes painful. Buddhism teaches that true strength begins when we stop resisting the reality of our experiences and start learning from them. Instead of asking, "Why is life attacking me?" we begin asking, "What can this moment teach me about myself?" Sometimes hardship teaches patience. When things do not move as quickly as we want, we learn to slow down and trust the process of life. Sometimes hardship teaches humility. When life does not follow our plans, we realize that we are not in complete control of everything. Sometimes hardship teaches compassion. When we experience our own suffering, we become more understanding toward the struggles of others. But perhaps the most important lesson hardship teaches is self-discovery. Difficult moments reveal the parts of ourselves that we never knew existed. Courage appears when fear tries to stop us. Wisdom appears when confusion forces us to reflect more deeply. Determination appears when the path forward seems uncertain. The Buddha often reminded his followers that the mind is incredibly powerful. When trained properly, it can remain calm even in difficult circumstances. This does not mean that problems disappear. It simply means that the mind becomes stable enough to face them without collapsing. One of the greatest mistakes people make is believing that strength means never feeling fear, sadness, or doubt. But even the strongest individuals experience these emotions. The difference is that they do not allow those emotions to control their entire life. Fear may appear, but they continue moving forward. Doubt may appear, but they do not stop trying. Pain may appear, but they do not allow it to destroy their hope. This quiet determination is the true meaning of inner strength. Another important teaching in Buddhism is that suffering can awaken wisdom. When life becomes difficult, many illusions begin to fall away. You begin to see what truly matters and what does not. You begin to recognize which relationships are genuine and which ones were only temporary. You begin to understand that peace does not come from controlling every situation, but from learning how to remain steady within change. In this way, difficult moments become part of your transformation. The person who enters the struggle is not always the same person who comes out of it. Hardship can reshape your perspective, deepen your awareness, and strengthen your character. Many people later look back at the hardest periods of their lives and realize that those moments quietly shaped the person they became. What once felt like a breaking point became the beginning of growth. This does not mean that suffering is something we should seek or celebrate. Pain is still painful, loss is still difficult. But Buddhism reminds us that even within suffering, there is the possibility of awakening. Every difficult moment contains the opportunity to discover the depth of your own resilience. Sometimes strength looks dramatic, like standing up after a major failure or overcoming a huge obstacle. But often, strength appears in very quiet forms. Strength is waking up in the morning, even when you feel emotionally exhausted. Strength is continuing to care about others, even when you are struggling yourself. Strength is choosing patience instead of anger, understanding instead of bitterness. These small choices may not look impressive from the outside, but they represent powerful inner growth. Another reason people underestimate their strength is because they compare themselves to others. They look at someone who seems more successful, more confident, or more stable, and believe that they themselves are weaker. But every person's journey is different. Every individual carries struggles that are invisible to others. True strength is not measured by comparison. It is measured by your willingness to keep moving forward despite difficulty. The Buddha often spoke about the importance of inner discipline. The mind, when left untrained, can easily fall into fear, negativity, and doubt. But with awareness and practice, the mind becomes more stable. It learns to observe emotions without being overwhelmed by them. This inner training does not happen overnight. It develops slowly through patience and awareness. Each time you choose calmness instead of panic, you strengthen your mind. Each time you observe your thoughts without believing every negative story, you gain greater control over your inner world. Over time, these small moments of awareness create a powerful transformation. You begin to trust yourself more. You realize that no matter what life brings, you have the ability to face it with awareness and resilience. When you truly understand this, something changes inside your heart. Fear begins to lose its control over you. Challenges still appear, but they no longer feel like the end of the world. Instead, they become part of the journey of growth. And perhaps the most beautiful realization of all is this: the strength you were searching for was never outside of you. It was never hidden in someone else's approval or in perfect circumstances. It was always within you. Every time you stand back up after a difficult moment, every time you continue walking despite uncertainty, every time you choose patience instead of despair, you are proving something powerful to yourself. You are proving that you are far stronger than you once believed. So when life feels heavy and the road ahead looks difficult, remember this simple truth. You have already survived many storms in your life. The same strength that carried you through those storms still lives inside you today. And with patience, awareness, and courage, that strength will continue guiding you forward one step, one breath, and one moment at a time. 8. Let go of what you cannot control. One of the quiet sources of suffering in human life is the deep desire to control everything. The mind wants certainty. It wants life to follow a clear plan. It wants people to behave the way we expect. It wants situations to unfold exactly as we imagine. But the reality of life is very different. Life is constantly moving, constantly changing, and much of it is beyond our control. When we try to control everything, we create a constant battle between our expectations and reality, and that battle slowly drains our peace. The Buddha understood this struggle very clearly. He taught that much of our stress does not come from life itself, but from our resistance to how life naturally unfolds. We hold tightly to outcomes. We cling to plans. We try to shape every situation so that it matches our desires. When things do not go the way we hoped, frustration and disappointment appear. Think about how often people feel anxious because they want to control things that are simply not controllable. Someone may try to control how others think about them. They may worry endlessly about whether people approve of them or judge them. Someone may try to control the future, constantly worrying about whether their plans will succeed. Others try to control relationships, fearing that someone they care about might leave or change. But no matter how hard we try, we cannot fully control these things. We cannot control every opinion people form about us. We cannot control every event that will happen in the future. We cannot control the choices of other people. When we attempt to hold on to these things too tightly, the mind becomes tense and restless. Buddhism invites us to look at life with a different perspective. Instead of trying to control everything, we learn to understand the difference between what we can control and what we cannot. This simple understanding can transform the way we experience life. There are some things that are within your control: your actions, your effort, your attitude, and the way you respond to situations all belong to you. You have the ability to choose patience instead of anger. You can choose kindness instead of cruelty. You can choose discipline instead of laziness. These are areas where your decisions truly matter. But many other things exist outside your control. You cannot control how other people feel about you. You cannot control whether someone appreciates your efforts or ignores them. You cannot control every event that appears in your life. You cannot stop change from happening. When we confuse these two categories, suffering begins. We waste energy trying to control what cannot be controlled, while neglecting the things that are actually within our power. The Buddha encouraged people to redirect their attention toward the things they can influence. Instead of worrying endlessly about the opinions of others, focus on living with integrity and honesty. Instead of fearing every possible future problem, focus on doing your best in the present moment. Instead of trying to force relationships to stay exactly the same, learn to appreciate them while they exist. Letting go of control does not mean giving up responsibility. It simply means releasing the illusion that everything must go exactly the way you want. It means trusting that life is a process that unfolds step by step, often in ways we cannot fully predict. Nature provides a beautiful example of this principle. Imagine a river flowing through a valley. The river does not try to force the landscape to change. It does not panic when it encounters rocks or bends in its path. Instead, it adapts. It moves around obstacles. It continues flowing forward. Human life works in a similar way. When we become too rigid in our expectations, every unexpected event feels like a disaster. But when we learn to flow with life's changes, obstacles become easier to navigate. Letting go also creates emotional freedom. When you stop trying to control everything, the mind becomes lighter. You begin to understand that your responsibility is to act with wisdom and effort, but the results are not always in your hands. For example, you can work hard toward a goal, but you cannot control every factor that determines the outcome. You can treat people with kindness, but you cannot control whether they respond the same way. You can make thoughtful decisions, but life may still bring unexpected turns. Accepting this truth allows the mind to relax. Instead of constantly fearing uncertainty, you begin to trust your ability to adapt. Another important part of letting go is releasing attachments to specific expectations. The mind often builds a picture of how life should look. It imagines the perfect career, the perfect relationship, the perfect timeline for success. When reality does not match that picture, disappointment appears. But sometimes the life that unfolds is different from the life we planned, and that difference may contain new opportunities that we could not see before. Many people discover meaningful paths only after their original plans fall apart. What once looked like failure becomes the beginning of a new direction. The Buddha taught that clinging too tightly to expectations creates suffering, but when we allow life to unfold naturally, we become more open to unexpected growth and transformation. Letting go also means releasing emotional burdens that the mind continues carrying long after the situation has passed. Many people hold on to resentment, regret, and anger for years. They replay painful experiences repeatedly, believing that holding on to those emotions will somehow give them control over what happened. But these emotional burdens do not change the past. They simply continue to disturb the present. When we learn to let go, we free ourselves from these unnecessary weights. This does not mean forgetting important lessons or pretending that painful events never occurred. It simply means choosing not to carry those emotions endlessly. Forgiveness is often part of this process. Forgiveness does not always mean approving of what someone did. It means releasing the grip that anger has on your own peace. In Buddhism, letting go is often compared to opening your hand. When you hold something tightly in your fist, your hand becomes tense and tired. But when you open your hand, it relaxes naturally. The same principle applies to the mind. When we cling tightly to control, expectations, and resentment, the mind becomes tense. But when we loosen that grip, peace slowly returns. Life becomes easier when you understand that you are not responsible for controlling the entire world. Your role is simply to live with awareness, kindness, and effort. The rest of life will unfold in its own way. And often, when we stop trying to force everything into our plans, we discover that life begins to flow more smoothly. So, when you feel overwhelmed by things that seem beyond your control, pause for a moment. Take a breath. Ask yourself what truly belongs within your influence and what does not. Focus your energy on the actions you can take, the values you can live by, and the awareness you can cultivate. Then gently release the rest. Because sometimes the greatest peace does not come from controlling life, but from learning how to let it unfold. 9. Your mind can become your greatest friend or your greatest enemy. One of the most important teachings in Buddhism is the understanding that the mind has incredible power. The same mind that can create peace, clarity, and wisdom can also create anxiety, confusion, and suffering. In many ways, your mind can become either your greatest friend or your greatest enemy, depending on how it is trained. Most people spend their entire lives reacting to whatever thoughts appear in their minds. When a fearful thought appears, they feel afraid. When an angry thought appears, they become angry. When a negative belief about themselves appears, they begin to feel weak or insecure. They assume that because a thought exists in their mind, it must be true, and must control their emotional state. But the Buddha taught that the mind does not have to operate this way. Thoughts are not commands that must be obeyed. They are simply mental events that arise and pass away. The problem is not that thoughts appear. The problem is that we become attached to them and allow them to control our behavior. Imagine your mind as a garden. If a garden is left completely unattended, weeds begin to grow everywhere. The weeds slowly take over the space, covering the healthy plants and making the garden difficult to manage. But when someone cares for the garden, removes the weeds, and nurtures the healthy plants, the garden becomes beautiful and peaceful. The mind works in a similar way. If we do not pay attention to it, negative habits of thinking slowly take over. The mind becomes filled with worry, comparison, self-doubt, anger, and endless overthinking. These mental patterns grow stronger over time because they are repeated again and again. But the good news is that the mind can be trained. Buddhism places great importance on developing awareness of the mind. The first step in transforming the mind is simply observing it. Instead of automatically believing every thought, you begin to watch your thoughts with curiosity. You notice when fear appears. You notice when anger begins to rise. You notice when the mind starts comparing itself to others. This awareness creates space between you and your thoughts. Instead of being controlled by them, you begin to understand them. For example, imagine a moment when someone criticizes you. The mind might immediately react with anger or insecurity. It might create thoughts such as, "They don't respect me," or "Maybe I am not good enough." If you automatically believe those thoughts, your emotions quickly become disturbed. But when you practice awareness, something different happens. You notice the reaction inside your mind. You observe the thoughts forming. Instead of immediately reacting, you pause and simply watch the experience. This pause changes everything. By observing the thought rather than becoming it, you create freedom. You give yourself the ability to choose how to respond instead of reacting automatically. Over time, this practice allows you to recognize unhealthy thinking patterns. You begin to see how often the mind exaggerates problems. It may imagine worst-case scenarios, criticize itself harshly, or assume negative intentions from others without real evidence. When you see these patterns clearly, they begin to lose their power. Another important part of training the mind is developing positive mental qualities. Just as weeds grow in a neglected garden, healthy plants grow when they are nurtured. Qualities like patience, compassion, gratitude, and mindfulness can be strengthened through practice. For example, when you deliberately practice gratitude, the mind slowly becomes less focused on what is missing and more aware of what already exists. When you practice compassion toward others, anger begins to soften. When you practice patience, the mind becomes less reactive to small frustrations. These changes may seem subtle at first, but over time they reshape the entire mental landscape. One of the reasons the mind becomes such a powerful source of suffering is because it constantly compares. It compares your life to the lives of others. It compares your current situation to your expectations. It compares your achievements to someone else's success. This comparison creates feelings of inadequacy and dissatisfaction. But when you train the mind through awareness, you begin to see that these comparisons are simply thoughts, not objective truths. Everyone's journey is different. Every person faces struggles that are often invisible from the outside. When you stop allowing comparison to dominate your thinking, the mind becomes lighter and more peaceful. Another important Buddhist teaching is that the mind becomes whatever it repeatedly focuses on. If you constantly focus on negativity, problems, and fears, those mental states grow stronger. The mind becomes more accustomed to stress and worry. But when you focus on awareness, compassion, and calm observation, those qualities grow stronger instead. This is why meditation is such a central practice in Buddhism. Meditation is not about escaping life or emptying the mind completely. It is about training the mind to become more stable and aware. When you sit quietly and observe your breath, you begin to see the nature of the mind more clearly. Thoughts come and go, emotions rise and fall. But beneath all this movement, there is a deeper awareness that remains calm and steady. The more you practice this awareness, the less control your thoughts have over you. Over time, the mind begins to transform from a chaotic and reactive place into a stable and supportive companion. Instead of constantly attacking you with negative beliefs, the mind becomes a source of clarity and guidance. Instead of being overwhelmed by every emotional wave, you learn to observe those waves without being carried away by them. This transformation does not happen overnight. Just like strengthening a muscle, training the mind requires patience and consistency, but every small moment of awareness contributes to the process. Each time you notice a negative thought without immediately believing it, you strengthen your awareness. Each time you choose patience instead of anger, you strengthen your emotional stability. Each time you return your attention to the present moment, you calm the restless movement of the mind. Gradually, the mind begins to work with you instead of against you. And when the mind becomes your ally rather than your enemy, life begins to feel very different. Challenges may still appear, but they no longer overwhelm you in the same way. You gain the ability to face difficulties with calmness and clarity. This is why the Buddha often emphasized that mastering the mind is one of the most important achievements in life. External success, wealth, and recognition can come and go. Circumstances constantly change. But a well-trained mind remains steady through both success and failure. It becomes a source of inner stability that cannot easily be shaken by the changing conditions of life. So when life feels difficult and your thoughts begin to turn against you, remember this important truth. Your mind is not your enemy by nature. It simply reflects the habits it has learned over time. With patience, awareness, and practice, those habits can change. And as your mind becomes clearer and more balanced, you will begin to discover something powerful. The same mind that once created suffering can become the very source of your peace, wisdom, and inner freedom. 10. Even the darkest moment can become the beginning of your awakening. There are moments in life when everything feels heavy at the same time. The mind becomes tired, the heart feels discouraged, and the future looks uncertain. During these periods, it can feel as if life has placed you in darkness with no clear way forward. Many people believe that these dark moments are signs that life is going wrong. They think they are falling behind, failing, or losing their direction. But Buddhism offers a very different perspective on these experiences. According to the Buddha's teachings, some of the darkest moments in our lives can quietly become the beginning of our awakening. The moments that seem like endings are sometimes the moments where a deeper transformation begins. Awakening in Buddhism does not always happen in peaceful temples or during perfect meditation sessions. Often, awakening begins when a person becomes tired of suffering. It begins when someone finally sees that the patterns they have been following are not bringing real peace. When this realization appears, something inside the mind starts to change. Many people live their lives chasing things they believe will make them happy. They chase approval from others. They chase success, recognition, or the feeling of being important. They believe that once they reach a certain level of achievement, or once they receive enough validation from the world, their life will finally feel complete. But sooner or later, many people discover that these things do not bring lasting peace. Even after achieving what they once desired, the mind continues searching for more. The satisfaction fades quickly and the restlessness returns. Sometimes it takes a difficult moment for a person to see this clearly. A disappointment, a loss, a rejection, or a major life challenge can suddenly reveal how fragile these external sources of happiness really are. At first, these experiences may feel painful, but hidden inside them is a powerful opportunity. They invite you to look deeper into your life and ask important questions. You may begin to ask yourself questions like, what truly brings peace into my life? Why am I constantly chasing things that never fully satisfy me? What does it actually mean to live with awareness and balance? These questions mark the beginning of awakening. In Buddhism, awakening is not about escaping life or becoming emotionally numb. It is about seeing reality more clearly. It is about understanding the nature of the mind, the nature of suffering, and the path that leads beyond it. Often, people only begin this journey when life shakes them awake. Think about how many individuals discover their true direction only after a difficult period in their lives. Someone may lose a job and suddenly realize they were following a path that never truly aligned with their values. Someone may experience the end of a relationship and begin to understand the importance of self-awareness and emotional growth. Someone may face failure and discover strengths they never knew they had. These turning points can feel painful at first, but they often lead to profound transformation. The Buddha himself experienced something similar before his enlightenment. As a prince, he lived in luxury and comfort. His life appeared perfect from the outside. But when he encountered the realities of sickness, aging, and death, he realized that even the most comfortable life could not escape suffering. This realization deeply disturbed him, but it also awakened a powerful desire to understand the true nature of existence. Instead of ignoring these questions, he chose to seek deeper wisdom. That search eventually led him to enlightenment and the teachings that would later help millions of people find peace. In the same way, difficult experiences in our lives can become the beginning of deeper understanding. When everything seems to fall apart, the mind is forced to let go of old illusions. The belief that life must always go according to our plans begins to fade. The belief that happiness depends entirely on external success begins to weaken. The belief that we must constantly chase approval from others starts to lose its power. In their place, a new awareness begins to grow. You start to understand that true peace does not come from controlling every situation. It comes from developing inner stability and awareness. You begin to see that happiness is not something that can be permanently secured through external achievements. It arises from the way you relate to your experiences in the present moment. You begin to realize that life is constantly changing, and learning to flow with those changes is far more powerful than trying to resist them. This shift in understanding is the essence of awakening. Awakening does not mean that life suddenly becomes free from challenges. Problems will still appear. Unexpected events will still happen. But the way you experience those situations changes dramatically. Instead of reacting with panic or despair, you begin to respond with awareness. Instead of feeling completely overwhelmed by every obstacle, you see challenges as part of the natural movement of life. Your mind becomes more stable, more patient, and more compassionate. Another important aspect of awakening is the recognition that every person is walking their own path. Many people feel discouraged because they compare their lives to others. They see someone else's success and believe they are falling behind. But awakening helps you realize that life is not a race. Each individual's journey unfolds in its own unique way. Some people discover clarity early in life, others find it later. Some grow through quiet reflection, while others grow through dramatic challenges. There is no single timeline for awakening. What matters is the willingness to learn from life's experiences and continue developing awareness. Even moments of deep sadness or confusion can become powerful teachers. They show you what truly matters. They reveal which attachments are causing suffering. They invite you to look inward rather than constantly searching for answers outside yourself. This process may feel uncomfortable at times because it requires honesty with yourself. It asks you to observe your habits, your fears, and your emotional patterns. But this honesty also creates freedom. When you see your patterns clearly, you gain the ability to change them. When you understand your attachments, you gain the ability to release them. When you recognize how your mind creates suffering, you gain the ability to cultivate peace. This is why some of the most meaningful growth in life happens during periods that once felt like breaking points. What once appeared as darkness becomes the space where new awareness is born. So if you are currently walking through a difficult period in your life, remember this important truth. This moment does not define your entire story. What feels like an ending may actually be the beginning of a deeper transformation. Every challenge you face contains the possibility of awakening. Every painful moment carries the potential to teach you something valuable. Every dark night eventually gives way to a new dawn. And sometimes, the moment you feel most lost is the very moment your deeper journey begins. 11. The peace you are searching for has always been within you. Many people spend their entire lives searching for peace in the outside world. They believe peace will come when life becomes easier, when they finally achieve success, when people begin to appreciate them more, or when their problems disappear. The mind creates a quiet belief that happiness is waiting somewhere in the future, just beyond the next achievement, the next relationship, or the next moment of recognition. Because of this belief, people keep chasing. They chase approval, status, money, attention, and the feeling of being important. For a short moment, when they receive what they were chasing, they feel excited and satisfied. But that feeling rarely lasts long. Soon the mind begins searching again, believing that the next thing will finally bring lasting peace. The Buddha observed this pattern deeply. He saw how human beings continuously chase external things, hoping they will finally feel complete. But he also saw that this search often leads to exhaustion rather than peace. The more tightly people chase happiness outside themselves, the more restless their minds become. One of the most powerful discoveries in Buddhism is the realization that the peace we are searching for is not something that must be found somewhere far away. It already exists within us. It is not something that can be given by another person or guaranteed by perfect circumstances. It is something that appears naturally when the mind becomes calm and aware. But most people never notice this inner peace because their minds are constantly distracted. The mind is always busy thinking about the past or worrying about the future. It jumps from one thought to another without stopping. It compares, judges, fears, and desires continuously. Imagine the surface of a lake during a strong storm. The water becomes rough and chaotic. Waves move in every direction. The surface becomes so disturbed that you cannot see clearly into the water. But when the wind stops and the lake becomes still, the surface slowly becomes calm again. When the water is calm, it becomes clear and reflective. The human mind works in a very similar way. When the mind is constantly disturbed by endless thinking and emotional reactions, it becomes difficult to experience peace. But when the mind becomes quiet and aware, the natural calmness within it begins to appear. This calmness is not something we create from the outside. It has always been there, beneath the noise of our thoughts. Buddhism teaches that peace does not come from controlling every situation in life. Life will always contain uncertainty. Unexpected events will always appear. People will behave in ways we cannot predict. If peace depended on perfect conditions, it would be impossible to maintain. Instead, peace comes from understanding the nature of the mind and learning how to relate to life with awareness rather than constant reaction. For example, when something unpleasant happens, The mind often reacts immediately. It becomes angry, frustrated, or fearful. But when you develop awareness, you begin to notice these reactions without being completely controlled by them. You see the emotion arise, but you do not allow it to dominate your entire state of mind. This awareness creates inner space. Within that space, peace begins to appear naturally. Another important reason people struggle to experience inner peace is because they believe they must constantly prove themselves to others. Many individuals measure their value by the approval they receive from the world. They feel confident when they are praised and insecure when they are criticized. But when your sense of worth depends entirely on external validation, your peace becomes fragile. It rises and falls depending on the opinions of others. Buddhism encourages a different approach. Instead of building your identity around external approval, you begin developing inner qualities that bring stability regardless of circumstances. Qualities like mindfulness, compassion, patience, and wisdom become the foundation of your life. These qualities cannot be taken away by someone else's opinion. They grow from your own awareness and effort. When you cultivate these qualities, your mind slowly becomes less dependent on external conditions. You still appreciate positive experiences, but your happiness no longer disappears when difficulties arise. The Buddha often reminded his followers that each person carries the potential for awakening within them. Awakening does not mean becoming perfect or escaping life's challenges. It means understanding the nature of the mind and learning how to remain present and aware even when life becomes difficult. This understanding transforms how you experience the world. You begin to notice that peace is available even in simple moments. When you sit quietly and observe your breath, the mind becomes calmer. When you walk slowly and pay attention to your surroundings, the present moment feels richer. When you listen deeply to another person without judgment, compassion naturally appears. These simple moments reveal that peace is not hidden in distant achievements. It is present in the quiet awareness of life as it unfolds. Another powerful shift occurs when you stop constantly searching for happiness outside yourself. When the mind stops chasing and becomes more present, it begins to discover contentment in ordinary experiences. A calm morning, the warmth of sunlight, a quiet moment of reflection, the rhythm of breathing. These simple aspects of life often go unnoticed because the mind is always focused on what it believes is missing. But when awareness grows, gratitude naturally appears. You begin to appreciate life as it is, rather than constantly wishing it were different. This does not mean ignoring your goals or abandoning your ambitions. Buddhism does not ask people to stop improving their lives. It simply teaches that peace should not depend entirely on future achievements. You can work toward your goals while still maintaining inner balance. You can pursue success without believing that it is the only source of happiness. The more you understand this, the lighter life begins to feel. You stop carrying the heavy pressure of believing that everything must be perfect for you to feel calm. You realize that peace is not something you must chase endlessly. It is something you rediscover when the mind becomes still. This rediscovery often happens gradually. Each moment of mindfulness strengthens your awareness. Each moment of patience strengthens your emotional balance. Each moment of compassion deepens your connection with others. Over time, these small changes transform the way you experience life. Challenges still appear, but they no longer destroy your inner stability. Success may come and go, but your sense of worth remains steady. Relationships may change, but your peace does not depend entirely on them. You begin to live with a deeper understanding that peace is not something the world must give you. It is something that has always existed quietly within your own mind. And the more you learn to return to that inner stillness, the more you realize that the peace you were searching for everywhere else was never far away. It was always waiting for you to notice it. 12. Your life is not falling apart, it is falling into place. There are moments in life when everything feels like it is breaking at the same time. Plans fail, relationships change, opportunities disappear, and the future suddenly feels uncertain. During these periods, the mind quickly jumps to the conclusion that life is collapsing. It feels as if everything is going wrong and nothing is moving in the right direction. Many people look at these moments and believe they are signs of failure, signs that they have lost their path or that they are somehow falling behind in life. But Buddhist wisdom offers a very different way of seeing these experiences. Sometimes what feels like life falling apart is actually life quietly rearranging itself. The events that seem like chaos may actually be creating space for something new to emerge. What looks like an ending can slowly become the beginning of a deeper transformation. Human beings naturally prefer stability and predictability. The mind feels comfortable when life follows the plans it has created. When things move according to our expectations, we feel safe and confident. But life rarely follows a straight and predictable line. Change is part of the natural movement of existence. The Buddha taught that everything in life is constantly changing. Situations rise and fall. Relationships appear and disappear. Success and failure both come and go. This continuous movement is the nature of the world. Yet the mind often resists this truth. It wants things to remain fixed. It wants people to stay the same, opportunities to remain stable, and life to follow the path we imagined. When reality moves in a different direction, the mind experiences fear and confusion. But sometimes the changes we resist the most are the changes that guide us toward growth. Think about moments in your past that once felt like disasters. Perhaps a plan you worked hard for suddenly collapsed. Maybe a relationship you believed would last forever came to an unexpected end. Maybe you faced rejection, failure, or a situation that forced you to start over. At the time, those experiences may have felt devastating. The mind may have believed that everything was falling apart. But when you look back later, you may realize that those very moments changed the direction of your life in important ways. Many people discover new opportunities only after something unexpected happens. A closed door often forces someone to search for another path. A difficult experience may push someone to develop new skills, explore new interests, or meet people who later become important in their lives. In this way, life often moves in ways we cannot fully understand while we are living through them. The Buddha encouraged people to look beyond immediate appearances. What feels like loss today may reveal hidden lessons tomorrow. What feels like failure today may become the foundation for future wisdom. This does not mean that difficult moments are easy or painless. Change can be uncomfortable. Letting go of old plans can create uncertainty, but uncertainty is not always a negative thing. Sometimes it is the space where new possibilities quietly begin to grow. Nature provides a beautiful example of this process. In many forests, new life begins after destruction. When an old tree falls or a fire clears a section of land, sunlight reaches the ground for the first time in years. Seeds that were hidden beneath the soil finally receive the light they need to grow. What looked like destruction becomes the beginning of renewal. Human life often follows a similar pattern. When old structures in our lives fall away, new growth becomes possible. But the mind often struggles to trust this process. During difficult periods, it becomes filled with doubt. It asks questions like, "Why is this happening to me?" Or, "Why is everything going wrong at once?" The mind searches for immediate explanations, but sometimes the meaning of an experience is not visible right away. The Buddha taught that patience is essential during times of change. Just as a seed takes time to grow into a tree, the deeper meaning of life's challenges often reveals itself slowly. Instead of assuming that everything is falling apart, we can begin to observe what life might be teaching us. Sometimes life is guiding you away from environments that were no longer healthy for you. Sometimes it is removing distractions so that you can focus on what truly matters. Sometimes it is encouraging you to discover strengths that you did not know existed within you. Many people only discover their true direction after a period of confusion. When the old path disappears, they are forced to explore new possibilities. Through that exploration, they eventually find something that aligns more deeply with their values and purpose. Another important lesson in Buddhism is learning to release attachment to fixed expectations. The mind often builds a picture of how life should unfold. It imagines a specific timeline for success, a certain type of relationship, or a particular version of the future. But life does not always follow the pictures we create in our minds. When reality moves in a different direction, the mind may interpret this as failure. But in many cases, life is simply guiding us toward experiences we had not yet imagined. The problem is not that change occurs. The problem is that we expect life to remain exactly as we planned. When we loosen our attachment to rigid expectations, the flow of life becomes easier to navigate. Instead of fighting every unexpected turn, we begin to move with it. This shift does not mean abandoning responsibility or effort. You still work toward your goals. You still make thoughtful decisions. But you also accept that the outcome of every situation cannot be completely controlled. When you combine effort with acceptance, life begins to feel less like a battle and more like a journey. Another reason difficult periods can feel overwhelming is because the mind often believes that the present moment defines the entire future. When things are going wrong, the mind assumes that the future will always look the same. But this assumption is rarely accurate. Life has a remarkable way of changing directions when we least expect it. New opportunities can appear suddenly, new connections can form, new ideas can inspire fresh beginnings. Many people who once felt completely lost later realize that their most difficult period became the turning point that redirected their lives. In Buddhism, there is a deep trust in the process of growth. Just as a caterpillar must pass through a cocoon before becoming a butterfly, human beings often go through periods of confusion and discomfort before experiencing transformation. During these periods, the old version of ourselves slowly dissolves. Old beliefs, habits, and identities begin to fade. This process can feel unsettling because it removes the sense of stability we once relied on. But it also creates the space for a new version of ourselves to emerge. Growth rarely happens when everything is comfortable. It often appears during moments that challenge our understanding of who we are and what we are capable of becoming. When you face uncertainty with awareness instead of panic, you begin to see change differently. Instead of interpreting every difficulty as a sign of failure, you begin to recognize it as part of the unfolding process of life. Your life is not a straight line moving from success to success. It is a complex journey filled with unexpected turns, lessons, and opportunities for growth. Some chapters of this journey will feel peaceful and joyful. Others may feel confusing or painful, but every chapter contributes to the larger story of who you are becoming. So when life feels like it is falling apart, pause for a moment and take a deeper breath. Look beyond the immediate discomfort and remember that change is part of the natural rhythm of existence. What feels like chaos today may be quietly shaping your future in ways you cannot yet see. What feels like loss may be clearing the path for something new. What feels like confusion may be the beginning of deeper understanding. Your life is not necessarily collapsing when things become uncertain. Sometimes it is simply rearranging itself so that you can grow into the person you were always meant to become. And often, the moment when everything seems to fall apart is the very moment when life begins placing the pieces of your future together in a new and meaningful way. 13. Stop fighting life, learn to flow with it. One of the deepest struggles human beings face is the constant effort to fight against life itself. The mind wants everything to happen exactly as it imagines. It wants people to behave in certain ways, situations to unfold according to its plans, and the future to follow a path it can clearly predict. When life moves differently than expected, the mind becomes frustrated, anxious, and restless. Many people live their lives in this quiet battle with reality. They resist uncomfortable emotions, they resist change, they resist uncertainty. They resist the possibility that life might take them somewhere they never planned to go. This resistance slowly drains their energy and peace. The Buddha taught that much of human suffering is created not by life itself, but by the way we struggle against it. Life is constantly moving, constantly changing, and constantly transforming. When we try to hold everything in place, we create tension inside ourselves. Imagine standing in the middle of a flowing river while trying to stop the current with your hands. No matter how hard you try, the water will continue moving forward. Fighting it only exhausts you. But when you stop resisting and learn how to move with the flow of the river, the experience becomes very different. Life works in a similar way. When we constantly fight reality, we become tired, frustrated, and overwhelmed. But when we learn to flow with life's natural movement, we discover a new kind of peace. Flowing with life does not mean giving up or becoming passive. It does not mean accepting injustice or refusing to take action when action is needed. Instead, it means understanding the difference between what can be influenced and what cannot. You can control your actions. You can control your effort. You can control how you respond to situations, but you cannot control every outcome. You cannot control every opinion others have about you. You cannot control every unexpected event that appears along your path. When we accept this reality, we stop wasting energy trying to force the world into our expectations. The Buddha often emphasized the importance of wisdom in recognizing the nature of existence. Life is unpredictable. Change is constant. Trying to freeze life into a perfect and stable form is impossible. Yet the mind continues trying to do exactly that. For example, someone may expect their career to progress in a straight line. They imagine that if they work hard enough, everything will go exactly as planned. But life rarely follows a perfectly predictable path. Unexpected obstacles appear, opportunities shift, circumstances change. When these changes occur, the mind often reacts with frustration and fear. But sometimes these unexpected turns lead to experiences that are even more meaningful than the original plan. The same pattern appears in relationships. People often expect others to remain exactly the same. They want relationships to stay stable and predictable forever. But human beings are constantly growing and changing. When we try to hold people in fixed roles or expectations, tension appears. But when we allow relationships to evolve naturally, we create space for deeper understanding and compassion. Learning to flow with life also means accepting that emotions will come and go. Many people believe they must always feel happy, confident, or strong. When sadness or uncertainty appears, they resist those emotions and believe something is wrong. But emotions are part of the natural rhythm of human experience. Just as the weather changes from sunshine to rain and back again, our emotional states also shift over time. When you stop fighting your emotions and begin observing them with awareness, they lose much of their power. Instead of becoming overwhelmed by sadness or anger, you allow those feelings to rise and fall naturally. This practice creates emotional balance. Another important aspect of flowing with life is releasing the need for constant certainty. The mind often feels uncomfortable when the future is unclear. It wants guarantees about what will happen next. But life rarely provides complete certainty. The Buddha taught that uncertainty is not something to fear. It is simply part of existence. In fact, Uncertainty is what allows new possibilities to appear. If everything in life were fixed and predictable, growth would be impossible. Change creates the opportunity for transformation. When you learn to live with uncertainty instead of fearing it, the mind becomes more flexible and resilient. You begin to trust your ability to adapt to whatever situations arise. This trust in your own adaptability is a powerful form of freedom. Flowing with life also means letting go of the constant need to control how others see you. Many people spend enormous energy trying to manage their reputation and protect their image. They worry about how they are judged and whether they are being accepted by everyone around them. But this constant effort creates tension. You cannot control every opinion that exists about you. People will always see you through the lens of their own experiences, beliefs, and emotions. When you stop trying to control every perception, you gain a sense of emotional freedom. You focus instead on living with honesty, kindness, and awareness. This shift simplifies life in a profound way. Another beautiful aspect of flowing with life is the ability to appreciate the present moment. When the mind stops constantly fighting reality, it becomes more aware of the experiences happening right now. The warmth of sunlight on your skin, the rhythm of your breathing, the quiet sound of wind moving through trees, the presence of someone sitting beside you. These simple experiences often go unnoticed when the mind is busy resisting life or chasing something in the future. But when awareness grows, these small moments begin to feel meaningful and peaceful. The Buddha taught that true freedom comes from understanding the nature of life rather than trying to control it. When you see clearly that everything is constantly changing, you stop clinging so tightly to specific outcomes. Instead, you begin to participate in life more fully. You work toward your goals, but you are not destroyed if circumstances change. You build relationships, but you do not collapse if those relationships evolve. You face challenges, but you trust your ability to adapt. This balance creates a deep sense of inner stability. Flowing with life also strengthens resilience. When unexpected events appear, you respond with awareness instead of panic. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" you begin asking, "How can I move through this experience with wisdom?" This question opens the door to growth. Many of the most meaningful transformations in life occur when people stop fighting reality and begin learning from it. Challenges become teachers. Change becomes an opportunity. Uncertainty becomes a space for discovery. The more you practice this mindset, the more peaceful life begins to feel. Instead of constantly struggling against the movement of life, you begin to move with it. Instead of exhausting yourself trying to control everything, you focus on living with awareness and intention. Instead of fearing change, you recognize it as the natural rhythm of existence. So when life feels difficult and things are not unfolding according to your plans, pause for a moment and take a breath. Remember that life is not a rigid structure that must follow a single path. It is a flowing process, constantly evolving and transforming. The more you learn to move with that flow, the more peace you will discover. Because sometimes the greatest strength is not found in forcing life to obey your expectations. Sometimes it is found in learning how to flow with the river of existence calmly, wisely, and with an open heart. 14. The quiet power of patience. In a world that moves quickly, patience has become one of the most misunderstood strengths a person can possess. Modern life teaches people to expect immediate results. If something takes too long, the mind becomes frustrated. If progress is slow, people begin to doubt themselves. Many believe that success, happiness, and peace should appear quickly if they are working hard enough. But the Buddha taught that true growth rarely happens quickly. Most meaningful transformations in life unfold slowly, quietly, and often without immediate signs of progress. Patience is the ability to remain calm and steady during this process. Many people struggle with patience because the mind constantly demands visible results. It wants proof that effort is paying off. It wants confirmation that the path you are walking will lead somewhere meaningful. When that confirmation does not appear immediately, doubt begins to grow. The mind starts asking questions like, "What if this effort is useless?" Or, "What if I am wasting my time?" These doubts can make people abandon their path too early, long before the real results have had time to appear. The Buddha understood that patience is not simply the act of waiting. Patience is the ability to remain balanced and aware while life unfolds at its own pace. Nature offers many examples of this principle. A tree does not grow overnight. A seed planted in the ground takes time before it becomes visible above the soil. At first, nothing seems to be happening. The ground looks unchanged. But beneath the surface, roots are slowly forming and strengthening. If someone looked at that soil during the early stages, they might assume that nothing is growing, yet the most important part of the process is happening out of sight. Human growth often follows a similar pattern. When you begin developing new habits, new skills, or a new mindset, the results may not appear immediately. You may practice discipline for weeks without seeing dramatic changes. You may work toward a goal for months while progress seems slow. During this period, patience becomes essential. Without patience, the mind becomes discouraged and gives up before the deeper transformation has time to develop. But when you understand that growth takes time, you allow the process to unfold naturally. The Buddha emphasized patience as one of the most important qualities of a peaceful mind. A patient mind does not panic when things move slowly. It does not react with frustration when obstacles appear. Instead, it remains steady and continues moving forward with awareness. Patience also plays a powerful role in how we deal with difficult emotions. When anger arises, the mind often wants to react immediately. It wants to speak harsh words, defend itself, or prove that it is right. But patience allows a small space to appear between the emotion and the reaction. In that space, wisdom has the opportunity to appear. Instead of reacting impulsively, you can pause, breathe, and observe what is happening inside your mind. This pause can prevent many unnecessary conflicts and regrets. The same principle applies to fear and anxiety. When the mind feels uncertain about the future, it often wants immediate reassurance. It wants answers about what will happen next. But patience allows you to sit with uncertainty without becoming overwhelmed by it. Over time, this ability strengthens emotional resilience. Patience also changes the way we view challenges. Many people interpret obstacles as signs that something is wrong. When progress becomes difficult, they assume that they are on the wrong path. But obstacles are often part of the natural process of growth. Think about someone learning a new skill. Whether it is learning a language, practicing meditation, or developing a new profession, progress rarely happens in a straight line. There are periods of improvement followed by periods of struggle. Without patience, these struggles feel discouraging, but with patience, they become part of the learning process. The Buddha himself practiced patience during his search for enlightenment. His journey was not immediate or easy. He spent years exploring different paths before discovering the middle way that eventually led to awakening. His story reminds us that meaningful understanding often requires persistence and patience. Patience also allows us to see life with greater clarity. When the mind is impatient, it becomes reactive. It jumps to conclusions quickly. It becomes irritated by small inconveniences and overwhelmed by minor setbacks. But a patient mind observes life more carefully. It sees situations from a broader perspective. Instead of reacting immediately, it allows time for deeper understanding to develop. This calm observation often leads to wiser decisions. Another beautiful aspect of patience is the peace it creates in relationships. Many conflicts between people arise because of impatience. Someone says something hurtful, and the immediate reaction is anger. Someone behaves in a way we do not understand, and the mind quickly forms negative assumptions. Patience allows space for compassion. Instead of reacting immediately, you give yourself time to understand the situation more clearly. You consider that the other person may also be dealing with their own struggles and emotions. This understanding softens the mind and reduces unnecessary conflict. Patience does not mean tolerating harmful behavior or ignoring important boundaries. It simply means responding thoughtfully instead of reacting impulsively. The more patience you cultivate, the more stable your inner world becomes. Life will still bring challenges. Delays will still happen. Plans will sometimes take longer than expected. But instead of becoming frustrated by these experiences, you begin to accept them as part of life's natural rhythm. The mind becomes less restless and more balanced. Patience also strengthens trust in the process of life. When you trust that growth takes time, you stop feeling pressured to rush every stage of your journey. You allow yourself to learn, improve, and evolve gradually. This patience reduces unnecessary stress and creates space for genuine development. The Buddha often described patience as a form of quiet strength. It is not loud or dramatic. It does not demand attention, but it supports every other quality of wisdom. Without patience, discipline becomes difficult. Without patience, compassion fades quickly. Without patience, awareness cannot deepen. But when patience is present, the mind becomes steady enough to grow. So when life feels slow or progress seems invisible, remember that many important changes are happening beneath the surface. Just as roots grow quietly underground before a tree rises toward the sky, your own growth may be unfolding in ways you cannot yet see. Every moment of patience strengthens your mind. Every moment of calm persistence moves you forward. And sometimes the most powerful progress in life is not the progress that happens quickly, but the progress that develops slowly, steadily, and with deep understanding. In this quiet patience, true transformation begins. 15. You are not behind. Life is unfolding at your own pace. One of the quiet struggles that many people carry today is the feeling that they are falling behind in life. The mind constantly compares. It compares your progress to the progress of others. It looks at someone else's achievements, relationships, wealth, or recognition, and begins to believe that everyone else is moving forward while you are somehow stuck. This feeling can slowly create a deep sense of pressure. You begin to believe that you should have achieved more by now. You may feel that you should already be more successful, more stable, or more certain about your future. The mind starts repeating a painful question: why am I not where I'm supposed to be? But Buddhism invites us to question this idea entirely. The belief that you are behind in life is not a fact. It is a story created by comparison. Life is not a race with a fixed timeline where everyone must reach certain milestones at the same moment. Each person's journey unfolds according to their own experiences, choices, and lessons. The Buddha never taught that life should follow a single schedule. Instead, he emphasized awareness, patience, and understanding. The path of growth is different for every individual. Think about nature for a moment. In a forest, not every tree grows at the same speed. Some trees grow quickly and reach great heights early. Others grow slowly, but develop strong roots before rising upward. Some plants bloom in the spring, while others bloom much later in the season. Yet none of these plants are behind. They are simply growing according to their nature. Human life works in a similar way. But modern society often encourages constant comparison. Social media, competition, and cultural expectations create the illusion that everyone should follow the same path. People feel pressured to achieve certain goals by certain ages. They believe they must have a successful career, stable relationships, and a clear life direction within a specific timeline. When life does not match these expectations, the mind begins to panic. But the Buddha taught that comparison is one of the habits that disturbs the mind. When you constantly measure your life against others, you lose the ability to appreciate your own journey. The truth is that every person carries a unique combination of circumstances, opportunities, and challenges. Some people find their path early. Others spend many years exploring different directions before discovering what truly fulfills them. Neither path is better than the other. Many individuals who appear successful on the outside may still feel lost inside. Others who seem uncertain may be quietly building wisdom that will guide them later in life. The mind cannot see the full story behind another person's life. Another important teaching in Buddhism is that growth often happens invisibly. Just because you cannot see immediate results does not mean nothing is happening. Just as roots grow underground before a tree becomes visible above the soil, personal development often occurs beneath the surface. During periods when life feels slow or uncertain, you may actually be learning important lessons. You may be developing patience, resilience, and awareness. You may be discovering what truly matters to you. You may be learning to release old beliefs that no longer serve your well-being. These internal changes are often far more important than external achievements. The Buddha himself spent years searching for understanding before reaching enlightenment. His journey involved confusion, experimentation, and moments of doubt. But each step contributed to the wisdom he eventually discovered. In the same way, your own experiences, even the confusing or difficult ones, are shaping your growth. Another reason people feel behind is because they imagine that life should move in a straight line. They expect steady progress without setbacks or detours. But life rarely follows a straight path. Sometimes we move forward quickly. Sometimes we pause. Sometimes we take steps backward before discovering a better direction. These changes are not signs of failure. They are part of the natural process of growth. Many meaningful achievements in life emerge only after periods of uncertainty. Think about people who discover their passion later in life. Some individuals spend years in careers that do not fulfill them before finding work that truly aligns with their values. Others experience difficult relationships before understanding what kind of connection they truly need. These experiences are not wasted time. They are part of the journey of understanding yourself. Buddhism teaches that awareness grows through experience. Every challenge, every mistake, and every moment of confusion can become a teacher. When you see life this way, the idea of being behind begins to lose its meaning. Instead of measuring your progress against someone else's timeline, you begin to focus on your own development. You ask yourself questions like, am I becoming more aware of my thoughts? Am I learning to respond with greater patience and understanding? Am I discovering what truly matters to me? These questions are far more valuable than asking whether your life matches someone else's expectations. Another powerful shift happens when you stop rushing your journey. Many people move through life with constant pressure, believing they must reach their goals as quickly as possible. This pressure creates stress and anxiety. But when you allow life to unfold at a natural pace, your mind becomes calmer. You can focus on learning, improving, and experiencing life fully instead of constantly worrying about where you should be. The Buddha taught that peace comes from awareness of the present moment. When the mind is constantly focused on the future, it misses the experiences happening right now. But when you bring your attention to the present moment, you begin to see that life is not something that starts in the future. Life is already happening. Your breath, your thoughts, your conversations, and your actions today are all part of your journey. When you appreciate the present moment, the pressure to catch up disappears. You begin to understand that your life is not late or early. It is simply unfolding. Another important lesson is that growth continues throughout life. Some of the wisest individuals discover their purpose later than others. Many people who change the world do not find their direction until their 30s, 40s, or even later. Human potential is not limited to a narrow timeline. The mind creates unnecessary pressure when it believes that opportunities disappear after a certain age or stage of life. But in reality, life is full of unexpected possibilities. New opportunities can appear at any moment. New ideas can inspire new directions. New experiences can reshape your understanding of yourself. When you stop believing that you are behind, you become more open to these possibilities. Instead of feeling discouraged, you begin to explore life with curiosity. You trust that your journey is developing in its own way. And perhaps most importantly, you begin to treat yourself with compassion. Buddhism teaches that compassion should not only be directed toward others, but also toward yourself. You are a human being learning through experience. You are allowed to take time. You are allowed to change direction. You are allowed to grow at your own pace. When you treat yourself with patience and understanding, the pressure of comparison begins to dissolve. Your life becomes less about racing toward an imagined destination and more about walking your path with awareness. So if you ever feel that you are behind, pause for a moment and breathe. Look at your life not through the lens of comparison, but through the lens of growth. Remember that every experience, even the confusing ones, is shaping your understanding. Your journey is not late. Your journey is not early. It is unfolding exactly as your life is meant to unfold. And when you trust this process, you discover a quiet peace that no timeline can disturb. 16. Your peace is more valuable than winning every battle. One of the quiet traps that many people fall into during their lives is the constant urge to win every argument, defend every opinion, and prove themselves right in every situation. The mind often believes that being right will bring satisfaction, respect, and a sense of control. It wants recognition. It wants validation. It wants the feeling that others see things the same way we do. But Buddhism teaches something very different. The Buddha often emphasized that protecting your inner peace is far more valuable than winning every battle with the world. In daily life, small conflicts appear constantly. Someone may misunderstand your intentions. Someone may criticize you unfairly. Someone may speak harshly or behave in a way that feels disrespectful. In these moments, the mind immediately reacts. It wants to respond quickly. It wants to defend itself. It wants to correct the other person and prove that they are wrong. This reaction feels natural, but it often creates more suffering than peace. Think about how many arguments people have that lead nowhere. Two individuals raise their voices, repeat their opinions, and try to defeat the other person's point of view. At the end of the conversation, both people feel tense and emotionally exhausted. Even if one person technically wins the argument, the inner disturbance often remains. The Buddha observed that much of this conflict arises from the ego, the part of the mind that constantly wants to protect its identity and beliefs. The ego fears being wrong because it believes that being wrong weakens its sense of self. But true wisdom understands that peace is more important than pride. This does not mean that you should never stand up for yourself or never express your perspective. There are situations where speaking clearly and setting boundaries is necessary. However, not every disagreement deserves your energy. Many arguments exist only to feed the ego. Imagine carrying a cup filled with clear water. If someone shakes the cup repeatedly, the water becomes disturbed and cloudy. The same thing happens to the mind when it constantly reacts to every small conflict. The mind loses its clarity and calmness. But when you learn to step back from unnecessary battles, the mind remains clear and steady. One of the most powerful forms of strength is the ability to remain calm when others expect you to react emotionally. When someone tries to provoke you and you respond with silence or patience, you break the cycle of conflict. Instead of feeding the argument, you allow it to dissolve. This does not mean you are weak. In fact, it often requires far greater strength to remain peaceful than to respond with anger. The Buddha taught that anger is like holding a hot coal with the intention of throwing it at someone else. Before the coal ever reaches the other person, it burns the hand that is holding it. In the same way, when we hold on to anger or resentment, we are the first ones to suffer from it. Learning to protect your peace means recognizing when a situation is not worth your emotional energy. Some misunderstandings will never be fully resolved. Some people are not ready to listen. Some conversations exist only to create conflict rather than understanding. When you accept this reality, you stop feeling responsible for correcting every opinion. Instead of trying to control how others think, you focus on maintaining balance within your own mind. This shift creates tremendous freedom. Many people spend years exhausting themselves trying to change the perspectives of others. They argue endlessly, hoping that if they explain themselves clearly enough, everyone will eventually understand them. But the truth is that not everyone will understand you, and that is perfectly normal. Every person views the world through their own experiences, beliefs, and emotional filters. Even if you explain your intentions perfectly, someone may still interpret them differently. When you stop expecting universal agreement, life becomes lighter. You can express your thoughts calmly and respectfully without becoming emotionally attached to how others respond. Another important aspect of protecting your peace is learning when to walk away. Walking away from unnecessary conflict is not a sign of defeat. It is a sign of maturity and self-awareness. It means you understand that your emotional well-being is more valuable than proving a point. Some people believe that walking away makes them appear weak, but in reality, it often shows great inner strength. Anyone can react impulsively, anyone can shout or defend their ego, but it takes awareness and discipline to remain calm and choose silence when silence is the wiser path. Buddhism teaches that the mind becomes stronger when it learns to observe rather than react. When someone criticizes you, instead of immediately responding, you can pause and reflect. Ask yourself whether the criticism contains any truth that could help you grow. If it does, you can learn from it without becoming defensive. If the criticism is unfair or based on misunderstanding, you can recognize that the other person's perspective reflects their own state of mind. Either way, your peace remains intact. Another important lesson is that not every battle you win will improve your life. In fact, some victories come at the cost of damaged relationships and disturbed inner peace. Winning an argument may give the ego a short moment of satisfaction, but losing your calmness often leaves a deeper emotional impact. The Buddha encouraged people to choose their battles wisely. Ask yourself whether the situation you are facing will still matter tomorrow, next week, or next year. Many conflicts that feel important in the moment lose their significance over time. By stepping back from these unnecessary struggles, you conserve your energy for what truly matters. This energy can then be directed toward meaningful goals, personal growth, and relationships that bring genuine understanding and connection. Protecting your peace also allows you to respond to difficult situations with compassion rather than anger. When someone behaves aggressively or disrespectfully, it is often a reflection of their own internal struggles. They may be dealing with stress, insecurity, or emotional pain that they do not know how to express in a healthy way. Recognizing this does not mean accepting harmful behavior, but it allows you to respond with greater awareness. Instead of becoming trapped in the same cycle of anger, you can choose calmness. Over time, this approach transforms your inner world. The mind becomes less reactive and more stable. Situations that once triggered strong emotional reactions begin to lose their power. You become someone who observes more and reacts less. This calm presence not only benefits you, but also influences the people around you. When others see that you do not easily lose your balance, they begin to treat you differently. Your calmness becomes a quiet form of leadership. The Buddha described inner peace as one of the greatest treasures a person can possess. It cannot be bought, and it cannot be forced through external success. It is cultivated through awareness, patience, and wise choices about where to place your attention and energy. Every time you choose peace over unnecessary conflict, you strengthen that treasure. Every time you step away from a battle that would only disturb your mind, you protect your well-being. And gradually, you begin to experience life differently. Instead of being pulled into every emotional storm, you remain centered. Instead of exhausting yourself trying to win every argument, you focus on living with clarity and purpose. Instead of allowing the ego to control your reactions, you let wisdom guide your responses. This transformation is one of the most powerful results of mindfulness and awareness. So the next time you feel the urge to defend yourself in a situation that does not truly matter, pause for a moment. Take a breath and ask yourself a simple question. Is this battle worth my peace? Most of the time, the answer will be clear. Your peace is far more valuable than the temporary satisfaction of winning an argument. And the more you protect that peace, the more stable, calm, and free your life will become. 17. Your life is not falling apart, it is transforming. There are moments in life when everything feels like it is collapsing at the same time. Plans fail, relationships change, opportunities disappear, and the future begins to feel uncertain. In those moments, the mind often jumps to the worst possible conclusion. It whispers that life is falling apart, that nothing is working, and that things may never improve. But one of the deeper insights taught in Buddhist wisdom is that many moments that feel like destruction are actually moments of transformation. The difficulty is that transformation rarely feels comfortable while it is happening. Imagine a forest after a storm. Trees may fall, branches scatter across the ground, and the landscape may look damaged or broken. If someone walked through the forest immediately after the storm, they might believe that the place had been ruined. But in reality, that storm is often part of the natural cycle of renewal. Sunlight now reaches areas that were once covered. New plants begin to grow where old ones once stood. The forest slowly reorganizes itself and becomes stronger over time. Human life follows a similar pattern. There are seasons when things feel stable and predictable, and there are seasons when everything seems uncertain. The mind often fears these uncertain seasons because it prefers familiarity and control. When life changes suddenly, the mind interprets the change as a threat. But what if some of the things that are leaving your life are actually making space for something new? Many people spend years holding on to situations that no longer support their growth. They stay in environments that limit them, relationships that drain them, and routines that slowly suffocate their potential. Sometimes change only begins when life forces it. A job ends unexpectedly, a relationship shifts, a path you believed in suddenly disappears. At first, the experience feels painful and confusing. The mind asks endless questions. Why did this happen? What did I do wrong? Why is my life moving in this direction? But the Buddha taught that life is constantly moving through cycles of change. Nothing in the world remains fixed. Every situation, whether joyful or painful, eventually transforms. The problem arises when the mind tries to freeze life in one moment and refuses to accept change. When we cling too tightly to how things used to be, we begin to experience suffering. The mind keeps comparing the present moment to the past and believes that something valuable has been lost forever. But often what is really happening is that life is shifting you toward a different stage of growth. Think about the many times in your life when something difficult eventually led to something meaningful. A failure may have forced you to learn a new skill. A rejection may have pushed you to explore a different path. A painful ending may have opened the door to a healthier beginning. At the time those events happened, they probably felt overwhelming. But with distance and reflection, their purpose becomes clearer. Buddhist teachings encourage us to view life not as a series of permanent structures, but as a flowing process. Everything is constantly forming, changing, and dissolving. Just as a river never holds the same water twice, your life is never standing still. Even when things feel chaotic or uncertain, the process of transformation is quietly unfolding beneath the surface. Sometimes the parts of your life that break apart are the very structures that were holding you back. You may not see this immediately. The mind often focuses only on what has been lost. It mourns the familiar patterns that once provided comfort, even if those patterns were no longer healthy. But transformation often requires letting go of old identities. There are versions of you that cannot grow any further within the life you used to have. The person you are becoming may require new experiences, new perspectives, and new environments. And sometimes life rearranges itself in ways that feel uncomfortable in order to guide you toward that growth. This is why patience is so important during difficult times. When life enters a period of uncertainty, the mind desperately wants quick answers. It wants to know exactly where things are going and when the struggle will end. But transformation rarely follows a clear and predictable timeline. It unfolds gradually, often in ways that only make sense later. The Buddha encouraged people to remain mindful and present even during periods of difficulty. Instead of assuming that everything is collapsing, you can begin to observe what life might be teaching you. Ask yourself what this moment is revealing about your strengths, your attachments, and your ability to adapt. You may discover resilience you did not know you possessed. You may develop compassion for others who are also struggling with their own challenges. You may begin to see possibilities that were invisible when life was comfortable and routine. Transformation often requires stepping into the unknown, and the unknown can feel frightening because the mind cannot control it. But growth always lives on the other side of that uncertainty. Think of a seed planted in the soil. Before it becomes a plant, the seed must break open. From the outside, this process might appear destructive. The seed splits apart and loses its original form. But that breaking is what allows the plant to emerge. Without that transformation, the seed would remain trapped in its original shape forever. Human growth follows a similar pattern. Sometimes the life you built must shift, dissolve, or reorganize so that a deeper version of yourself can emerge. When you understand this, difficult moments begin to look different. Instead of assuming that life is punishing you, you begin to wonder what life might be preparing you for. This shift in perspective does not eliminate pain, but it gives that pain a sense of direction. You begin to see challenges as part of a larger journey rather than random suffering. The Buddha also emphasized the importance of trusting the present moment. Even when the future is unclear, you still have the ability to take one small step forward today. You can learn something new, you can strengthen your character, you can cultivate patience and awareness. Each small step contributes to the person you are becoming. The transformation may not be visible right away, but it is happening quietly. Just as a tree grows slowly over many seasons, your inner growth develops through countless moments of learning and adaptation. When life feels unstable, remember that stability does not always come from controlling circumstances. True stability comes from developing a mind that can remain calm even when circumstances change. A flexible mind adapts to the movement of life rather than resisting it. And as your awareness deepens, you begin to recognize that every phase of life carries its own purpose. Some phases are meant for building, others are meant for letting go, some are meant for learning patience and humility. Even the most confusing chapters of life are often shaping you in ways that will become meaningful later. One day, you may look back at this difficult period and realize that it was the moment when your perspective began to shift. It was the time when you discovered inner strength. It was the moment when life redirected you toward a path that ultimately led to greater peace and understanding. This is why Buddhism encourages trust in the unfolding of life. Not blind optimism, but a quiet understanding that change is part of the natural order of existence. Just as the seasons shift from winter to spring, the difficult periods of life eventually give way to new beginnings. The key is to remain open to the lessons within those moments. So, if your life currently feels uncertain or unstable, take a deep breath and remember this. Your life may not be falling apart. It may be reorganizing itself into something new. It may be clearing away old patterns that no longer belong in your future. It may be preparing you for a version of yourself that is wiser, stronger, and more aware than the one who began this journey. And even if you cannot yet see where the path is leading, you can still walk forward with patience and courage. Because transformation rarely announces itself clearly while it is happening. But one day, when you look back, you may realize that what felt like the hardest chapter of your life was actually the beginning of a much deeper story. 18. You are stronger than the moment you are living through. There are times in life when the weight of the present moment feels heavier than anything we have ever carried before. When problems appear one after another, the mind begins to feel overwhelmed. It starts whispering quiet doubts. It asks whether you are strong enough to handle what is happening. It wonders if the situation will ever improve. In those moments, it is easy to forget something very important, the strength that has already carried you through every difficult moment in your past. Buddhism reminds us that the mind often underestimates its own resilience. When suffering appears, the mind focuses only on the pain in front of it. It forgets the countless challenges it has already survived. Think about the moments in your life that once felt unbearable. There were days when you believed you could not handle what was happening. There were nights when your thoughts felt heavy and the future seemed uncertain. Yet somehow you continued moving forward. The truth is that human beings are far more resilient than they believe. The mind tends to magnify the present struggle and ignore the quiet strength that has been developing throughout life. Each challenge you have faced has slowly shaped your ability to endure, adapt, and grow. Even the moments that felt like failures were teaching you something about patience, awareness, and perseverance. The Buddha taught that life will always include difficulty because change is constant. Situations evolve, relationships shift, and circumstances move in directions we cannot fully control. But within that changing world, there is something stable that can be cultivated inside you: inner strength. This strength does not come from avoiding hardship. It grows precisely because hardship exists. Imagine a tree standing in a valley where strong winds frequently pass through. If the tree never experienced those winds, its roots would remain shallow. It would not need to grow deeply into the earth. But when storms arrive again and again, the tree slowly adapts. Its roots spread deeper into the soil, anchoring it firmly to the ground. Over time, the same storms that once threatened the tree become the reason it stands stronger than the trees that grew in calm conditions. Human resilience develops in a similar way. Every challenge you face invites you to grow stronger internally. At first, the process may feel uncomfortable. The mind prefers safety and predictability. When difficulties arise, the mind interprets them as threats. But if you remain present and patient, you begin to discover that those moments are strengthening parts of you that may have remained dormant otherwise. One of the key teachings of Buddhism is the importance of observing your thoughts during difficult moments. When life becomes hard, the mind often creates dramatic stories about the future. It says that the pain will last forever, or that nothing will ever improve. These thoughts can make the present moment feel even heavier. But thoughts are not always accurate reflections of reality. They are temporary mental reactions that arise from fear, uncertainty, or exhaustion. If you pause and simply observe those thoughts instead of believing them immediately, you begin to see them differently. You notice that they come and go like waves on the surface of the ocean. Some waves are large and powerful, while others are small and gentle, but no wave stays forever. Your awareness is like the deep water beneath those waves. Even when the surface is turbulent, the depth of the ocean remains calm and stable. When you remember this, the difficult moment you are living through becomes easier to hold. Instead of believing that the storm will last forever, you begin to trust that it is simply one phase of a larger journey. The Buddha often encouraged people to cultivate patience with themselves during times of hardship. Patience does not mean ignoring pain or pretending that everything is easy. It means allowing the moment to unfold without immediately judging it or resisting it. When you stop fighting the present moment, something subtle changes. Your mind becomes more spacious. Instead of being trapped in panic or frustration, you begin to observe the situation with greater clarity. This clarity allows you to respond wisely rather than react impulsively. Another important lesson is that strength is not always loud or dramatic. Many people imagine strength as something heroic, the ability to overcome obstacles quickly and confidently. But real strength often appears in quiet forms. Strength can be waking up and continuing your responsibilities even when you feel emotionally tired. It can be choosing patience instead of anger when someone treats you unfairly. It can be allowing yourself to rest and recover rather than forcing yourself to appear strong for others. Sometimes strength is simply the willingness to continue moving forward one small step at a time. Life does not require you to solve every problem immediately. Many challenges unfold slowly and require time to resolve. During these periods, the most powerful thing you can do is remain present and continue taking small actions that support your well-being. Over time, these small steps create momentum. Just as a long journey is completed by walking one step after another, difficult phases of life are navigated through consistent patience and awareness. It is also important to remember that the way you see yourself influences how you move through hardship. If you constantly tell yourself that you are weak or incapable, your mind begins to believe that story. Your confidence shrinks, and challenges begin to feel even more overwhelming. But when you remind yourself that you have already survived many difficult moments, your perspective changes. You begin to recognize that strength has been developing inside you for years. Every time you endured disappointment, you became a little more resilient. Every time you learned from a mistake, your understanding deepened. Every time you faced uncertainty and continued forward, your courage quietly expanded. This accumulated strength is still within you today. Even if the current moment feels heavy, it does not erase the resilience you have built throughout your life. The Buddha also spoke about compassion toward oneself during difficult times. Many people respond to hardship by criticizing themselves harshly. They blame themselves for feeling weak or for not solving their problems quickly enough. But this kind of self-judgment only increases suffering. True strength includes the ability to treat yourself with kindness while you are struggling. Just as you would show understanding toward a friend going through a difficult moment, you can extend that same compassion toward yourself. When you do this, the mind becomes softer and more balanced. Instead of fighting against yourself, you begin to support your own healing. Gradually, the difficult moment begins to feel less overwhelming. You may still face challenges, but you face them with a calmer and steadier mind. Over time, you may even notice that the moment you once feared becomes a turning point in your life. It becomes the experience that helped you develop patience, emotional maturity, and deeper awareness. Many people later discover that the hardest chapters of their lives were also the ones that shaped their greatest strengths. Without those challenges, they might never have developed the wisdom and resilience they now carry. So, if you are currently moving through a difficult phase of life, remember something important. The moment you are living through does not define your limits. It is simply a chapter within a much larger story. You have already survived countless moments that once seemed impossible, and the strength that carried you through those moments is still within you now. Even if progress feels slow, even if clarity has not yet arrived, you are still moving forward. And sometimes the quiet decision to keep going, even when life feels heavy, is the clearest sign of strength that exists. 19. Stop fighting every thought, let the mind settle naturally. When life becomes difficult, the mind often becomes louder than usual. Thoughts begin to move quickly. Worries appear one after another. The mind starts replaying past mistakes, imagining future problems, and questioning everything that is happening. In those moments, many people try to force their minds to become quiet. They try to push negative thoughts away, control every feeling, and stop the noise inside their heads. But the Buddha taught something very different about the nature of the mind. He explained that the mind cannot be forced into peace through struggle. In fact, the more you fight your thoughts, the stronger they often become. Imagine trying to push a beach ball underwater. The harder you push it down, the more pressure builds beneath the surface. Eventually, the ball shoots back up even faster. The same thing happens when you aggressively try to suppress your thoughts. The mind resists the pressure and produces even more mental noise. Many people spend years fighting their own minds without realizing that this struggle is creating more tension rather than peace. Buddhist wisdom suggests a gentler approach. Instead of trying to control every thought, you begin to observe them. You allow them to appear and disappear naturally without attaching yourself to them. This may sound simple, but it is a powerful shift in how you relate to your own mind. Think about the sky on a windy day. Clouds move across the sky constantly. Some are dark and heavy, while others are light and scattered. But the sky itself is never disturbed by the movement of the clouds. The sky simply allows them to pass. Your awareness is like that open sky. Thoughts are like the clouds moving through it. When you learn to watch your thoughts without immediately reacting to them, something interesting begins to happen. The mind slowly starts to settle on its own. Just as muddy water becomes clear when it is left undisturbed, the mind becomes calm when it is not constantly being pushed or resisted. One of the biggest reasons people suffer mentally is because they believe every thought they have. If a negative idea appears, they assume it must be true. If the mind predicts failure, they immediately feel discouraged. If the mind compares them to others, they begin to feel inadequate. But the Buddha encouraged people to question their automatic thoughts. Just because the mind produces an idea does not mean that idea reflects reality. The mind is a storyteller. It creates narratives based on memories, fears, and assumptions. Sometimes those stories are helpful, but many times they are simply reactions to temporary emotions. For example, when you are tired or stressed, the mind may suddenly believe that everything in your life is going wrong. Problems that seemed manageable yesterday may suddenly feel overwhelming. But the situation itself has not changed as much as the state of your mind has. When you recognize this pattern, you begin to see thoughts more clearly. Instead of becoming trapped inside every mental story, you become the observer of those stories. This simple shift creates a great deal of freedom. You may still experience anxious thoughts, but you no longer feel forced to follow them. You can acknowledge them and let them pass without allowing them to control your emotions. The practice of mindfulness, which is central to Buddhism, helps cultivate this awareness. Mindfulness simply means paying attention to the present moment without judgment. When you sit quietly and observe your breathing, your thoughts naturally begin to slow down. At first, the mind may continue producing many ideas, but over time you notice that those thoughts lose their urgency. They become like distant sounds rather than commands that demand your attention. This is because the mind becomes calmer when it is not constantly being stimulated or resisted. Many people are surprised to discover that peace does not come from eliminating thoughts entirely. It comes from changing your relationship with them. You begin to understand that thoughts are temporary mental events rather than fixed truths about your life. This understanding removes much of their power. Another important lesson is that thoughts often become stronger when we attach emotions to them. For example, if a worried thought appears and you immediately react with fear, the mind interprets that fear as confirmation that the thought is important. It then repeats the thought again and again. But if you simply notice the thought without reacting emotionally, the mind gradually loses interest in repeating it. This is similar to how a child behaves when seeking attention. If the child receives a strong reaction every time they act out, the behavior continues. But if the reaction is calm and neutral, the behavior often fades. Your mind works in a similar way. When you stop feeding every thought with strong reactions, the mental noise slowly decreases. This process requires patience. The mind has developed habits over many years. It may be used to reacting quickly to stress or worry. Changing these habits takes time and gentle awareness. But with practice, you begin to experience moments of quiet clarity. During those moments, you realize that the mind is capable of great calmness when it is not constantly chasing or resisting its own thoughts. Another helpful perspective is remembering that thoughts are not permanent parts of your identity. Many people believe that the thoughts they have define who they are. If they experience negative thoughts, they assume something is wrong with them. But the Buddha taught that the mind is constantly changing. Thoughts appear due to countless influences such as past experiences, current emotions, and external circumstances. They do not define your true nature. Your true nature is the awareness that observes those thoughts. This awareness is always present beneath the activity of the mind. When you connect with that deeper awareness, you begin to experience a sense of stability that is not dependent on the content of your thoughts. Even if the mind becomes busy or anxious, the deeper awareness remains calm. Over time, this understanding transforms how you experience life. Instead of constantly battling your thoughts, you allow the mind to move naturally. You stop trying to force yourself into a state of constant positivity or control. Ironically, this acceptance often leads to greater peace than constant mental effort. The mind becomes quieter, not because it is being controlled, but because it is being understood. Just as a lake becomes still when the wind stops disturbing its surface, the mind becomes peaceful when it is no longer caught in endless resistance. This does not mean that you will never experience negative thoughts again. Thoughts are part of being human, but they no longer dominate your emotional world. You begin to see them as passing mental events rather than permanent realities. And as your awareness deepens, the mind begins to settle more often into a natural state of calm. This calmness is not forced or artificial. It arises naturally when the struggle inside the mind begins to fade. So the next time your thoughts feel overwhelming, remember this simple insight. You do not need to fight every thought. You do not need to control every mental story. Instead, allow your mind the space to settle on its own. Observe your thoughts with patience and curiosity, just as you would watch clouds drifting across the sky. And slowly, gently, you will begin to discover that peace has been present within you all along, waiting for the mind to stop fighting itself. 20. The hardest days are often preparing the strongest version of you. There are moments in life when everything feels heavier than usual, days when nothing seems to go the way you expected, days when your mind feels tired, your heart feels discouraged, and the future appears uncertain. In these moments, it is very easy to believe that life is simply being unfair to you. The mind begins to ask painful questions. It asks why things are so difficult. It wonders why others seem to be moving forward while you feel stuck. It may even start to believe that something is wrong with you. But one of the deeper lessons found in Buddhist wisdom is that the hardest periods of life are often the moments that prepare the strongest version of who you will become. Growth rarely happens during the comfortable seasons of life. When everything is going smoothly, the mind relaxes. It follows familiar patterns and rarely questions itself. Comfort can feel pleasant, but it does not always encourage transformation. Real growth usually begins when life becomes uncomfortable. Think about how muscles grow in the body. When you exercise, the muscles experience resistance. They are pushed beyond their usual limits. At first, this resistance feels uncomfortable. Sometimes it even feels painful. But that resistance is exactly what allows the muscles to become stronger over time. Without that pressure, the body would never develop greater strength. The mind and character grow in a similar way. When life becomes difficult, it pushes you beyond your usual emotional limits. Situations appear that require patience, courage, and resilience. At first, these experiences feel overwhelming because they challenge parts of you that are still developing. But slowly, those same challenges begin to strengthen your ability to handle life with greater awareness. Many people do not notice this transformation while it is happening. When you are inside a difficult moment, it can feel like you are simply struggling. The mind focuses on the discomfort rather than the growth that is quietly taking place. But if you look back at earlier stages of your life, you may notice something interesting. Situations that once felt impossible eventually became experiences you were able to overcome. There may have been times when rejection felt unbearable, but later you discovered new opportunities that would never have appeared otherwise. There may have been moments of failure that forced you to learn skills and develop discipline that later shaped your success. At the time those events happened, they probably felt like setbacks. But in reality, they were part of the process that strengthened you. The Buddha often spoke about the importance of understanding impermanence. Everything in life changes. Emotions change, circumstances change, and even the most difficult moments eventually pass. When you remember this truth, the present struggle begins to feel less permanent. Instead of seeing hardship as the end of your story, you begin to see it as a chapter within a much longer journey. Imagine reading a book where the main character never faces any challenges. The story would feel flat and uninteresting. It would lack depth and meaning. But when the character encounters obstacles, struggles through uncertainty, and learns from difficult experiences, the story becomes powerful. Your life follows the same pattern. The difficult chapters are often the ones that shape your character the most. They teach you patience when things do not happen immediately. They teach you humility when plans fail. They teach you resilience when life forces you to stand up again after falling. Over time, these lessons become the foundation of inner strength. Another important insight from Buddhism is that suffering often reveals where we have been holding unrealistic expectations about life. The mind sometimes believes that happiness should be constant and that difficulties should not appear. When reality does not match those expectations, frustration grows. But life has always included both joy and struggle. The purpose of wisdom is not to eliminate hardship completely, but to learn how to move through it with awareness and balance. When you accept that difficult moments are part of the human experience, they stop feeling like personal punishments. Instead, they become opportunities to deepen your understanding of yourself and the world around you. During the hardest days, you often learn things that comfort could never teach you. You learn how to sit with uncertainty without collapsing into fear. You learn how to rebuild your confidence after disappointment. You learn how to find meaning even when circumstances are not ideal. These lessons shape a stronger inner foundation, and that foundation becomes one of the most valuable things you can carry through life. Another reason difficult moments create strength is that they force you to look inward. When everything is going well, people often search for happiness outside themselves. They look for approval, success, or recognition to feel fulfilled. But when life becomes challenging, those external sources of comfort may disappear. At that point, the only place left to look is inside. This inward search is where real transformation begins. You begin asking deeper questions about what truly matters to you. You begin examining the beliefs that shape your decisions. You begin understanding that your peace cannot depend entirely on external circumstances. The Buddha encouraged people to cultivate inner stability rather than relying only on external conditions. When your sense of peace comes from awareness and understanding, it becomes much harder for life's difficulties to shake you completely. You may still feel sadness or frustration during hard times, but those emotions no longer control your entire sense of self. Instead, they become experiences that move through you without defining you. One of the most powerful shifts you can make during difficult periods is changing the way you interpret your challenges. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" you begin asking, "What is this moment teaching me?" This small change in perspective transforms the way you experience hardship. The situation itself may not change immediately, but your relationship to it becomes different. You begin to approach the moment with curiosity rather than resistance. This curiosity allows you to discover strength that may have been hidden within you. It also allows you to develop compassion for others. When you experience your own struggles deeply, you begin to understand that many people around you are facing their own invisible battles. This awareness softens your heart and encourages empathy. You become less quick to judge and more willing to support others who are also navigating difficult moments. In this way, hardship not only strengthens you, but also deepens your connection with the world. The Buddha believed that wisdom grows when we observe life honestly. Difficult experiences are part of that honesty. They reveal the fragile nature of expectations and remind us that true stability comes from within. As your understanding deepens, you begin to see that strength is not simply the ability to avoid pain. True strength is the ability to remain open and aware even when life becomes difficult. It is the ability to keep moving forward when the path feels uncertain. It is the ability to trust that every challenge is shaping you in ways you may not fully understand yet. So, if you are currently living through one of those heavy days when life feels overwhelming, remember something important. This moment is not the end of your story. It is part of the process that is shaping a stronger version of you. The patience you are learning now will help you navigate future challenges with greater calm. The resilience you are building today will support you in moments that once would have broken your confidence. And one day, when you look back on this chapter, you may realize that the days that once felt like your hardest were actually the days that prepared you for your greatest growth. Because sometimes the strongest people are not the ones who never face difficulty. They are the ones who allow those difficult moments to transform them into something wiser, calmer, and more resilient than they were before. Your value does not decrease because life feels difficult. There are moments in life when everything feels heavy, and during those moments, the mind can quietly begin to question your worth. When plans fail, when opportunities disappear, or when people walk away, the mind sometimes creates a painful belief. It begins to whisper that maybe you are not good enough, maybe you are behind in life, or maybe others are more successful, more capable, or more deserving than you. These thoughts can feel very convincing, especially when life is not going the way you hoped. But one of the most important lessons that Buddhist wisdom teaches is that your value as a human being does not rise and fall with the circumstances of your life. Your worth is not measured by how smooth your journey looks at any particular moment. Yet the mind often believes the opposite. It compares your life to the lives of others. It looks at their achievements, their happiness, or their progress, and begins to judge your own path harshly. The mind says, "Look at them, they are doing better than you." It focuses only on what you believe you are lacking. But comparison is one of the quiet sources of suffering. Every person walks through life with different challenges, different timing, and different lessons to learn. Some people experience success early, but struggle later. Others face many obstacles at the beginning and find their clarity much later in life. There is no single timeline that defines a meaningful life. The Buddha often reminded his followers that attachment to external validation creates unnecessary suffering. When your sense of worth depends on what others think of you, or on how your life appears from the outside, your peace becomes fragile. External conditions are always changing. Praise can turn into criticism. Success can turn into failure. Approval can turn into rejection. If your self-worth depends entirely on those shifting conditions, your emotional stability will always feel uncertain. This is why Buddhism encourages people to cultivate inner understanding rather than seeking constant confirmation from the outside world. Your value is not something that needs to be proven through constant achievement or approval. It is something that exists simply because you are alive and capable of awareness, growth, and compassion. When life becomes difficult, many people interpret those struggles as signs of personal failure. They assume that if something is not working, it must mean that they are not capable or worthy. But difficulty is not evidence of failure. Difficulty is part of being human. Every person who has ever lived has experienced moments of uncertainty, loss, and struggle. Even individuals who appear confident and successful from the outside have faced internal battles that others cannot see. The mind often hides this truth because it focuses only on visible outcomes. It sees someone's achievements, but not the years of doubt, rejection, and persistence that led to those achievements. It sees someone's happiness, but not the struggles they endured to reach that state of peace. When you remember this, comparison begins to lose its power. You begin to understand that everyone is moving through their own process of growth. Another important insight is that difficult periods of life often reveal strengths that you may not notice during easier times. When everything is comfortable, you rarely need to develop deep patience or resilience, but when challenges appear, those qualities begin to grow naturally. Each time you endure a difficult moment, you expand your ability to handle future situations with greater calm and wisdom. This growth may not always feel dramatic or immediate. Often it happens quietly. You may not notice that you have become more patient until you encounter a situation that once would have made you react impulsively. You may not notice that you have become stronger until you realize that something that once frightened you no longer has the same power over your emotions. This is the subtle way that character develops. And character is far more valuable than temporary success. External success can come and go, but the qualities you develop within yourself stay with you throughout your life. Another reason people question their value during difficult times is because society often teaches them to measure themselves through productivity and visible achievement. People are praised when they accomplish something impressive. They are admired when they move quickly towards success. But when someone experiences a period of struggle or uncertainty, society sometimes treats that moment as if it is something to hide or feel ashamed of. But this perspective ignores an important truth. Periods of difficulty are often the times when the most meaningful inner work happens. During these phases, you begin to examine your beliefs, your motivations, and your priorities more deeply. You begin asking questions about what truly matters, rather than simply following the expectations of others. This reflection creates wisdom. The Buddha believed that wisdom arises from understanding life honestly, rather than trying to maintain the illusion of constant success. If you look at the lives of many wise and compassionate individuals throughout history, you will often find that their understanding was shaped through hardship. They experienced loss, failure, or confusion, and those experiences forced them to reflect deeply on the nature of life. Through that reflection, they developed compassion, patience, and insight that later allowed them to help others. This means that the moments when you feel uncertain about yourself may actually be moments when your understanding is quietly expanding. Instead of interpreting these moments as proof that something is wrong with you, you can begin to see them as part of the process of becoming more aware. Another powerful shift happens when you begin treating yourself with the same kindness you would offer a friend. When someone you care about is struggling, you probably do not tell them that they are worthless or incapable. Instead, you remind them that difficult periods are temporary and that they still have value regardless of what they are going through. You encourage them to be patient with themselves and to continue moving forward. But many people do not offer themselves the same compassion. They become their own harshest critics. Buddhist teachings emphasize the importance of self-compassion because harsh self-judgment creates unnecessary suffering. When you treat yourself with patience and understanding, the mind becomes calmer and more balanced. You begin to realize that your worth does not disappear simply because you are experiencing a difficult chapter. In fact, difficult chapters often reveal your deepest strengths. They show your ability to continue trying even when results are uncertain. They show your courage to face uncomfortable truths about yourself and your life. They show your willingness to keep learning. These qualities are far more meaningful than temporary approval from others. Over time, as you practice awareness and self-compassion, your relationship with yourself begins to change. You stop measuring your value based only on external outcomes. You begin appreciating the quiet strengths you carry inside: your patience, your ability to reflect, your willingness to grow. This shift creates a much deeper sense of stability. Instead of constantly seeking confirmation that you are doing well enough, you develop trust in your own journey. You understand that life includes both smooth paths and difficult terrain, and neither one defines your worth. So if you are currently experiencing a moment when life feels heavy or uncertain, remember this simple truth: your value has not decreased. You are still the same person, capable of learning, adapting, and growing. This chapter of your life may feel confusing or challenging, but it does not erase the qualities that make you who you are. In fact, it may be shaping those qualities in ways that will become clearer later. Because sometimes the most important growth happens during the moments when you are learning to believe in your worth, even when life is not giving you easy reasons to do so. The peace you are searching for is already inside you. There is a quiet belief that many people carry through life without even realizing it. It is the belief that peace will arrive later, somewhere in the future, once the right conditions appear. The mind tells you that you will finally feel calm when your problems are solved, when your career becomes stable, when the right people enter your life, or when the world around you becomes less chaotic. Because of this belief, many people spend years searching for peace in external places. They look for it in achievements, relationships, recognition, or material success. They believe that if they can just organize their life perfectly, then the mind will finally become quiet. But the Buddha taught something very different about the nature of peace. He explained that the calmness people are searching for is not something that must be created in the future. It is something that already exists within the mind when we stop constantly disturbing it. This idea may sound simple, but it changes the entire way you understand happiness and emotional stability. Think about a lake in the middle of a quiet forest. When the wind is strong, the surface of the water becomes rough and restless. Waves move in every direction, and the reflection of the sky disappears. But when the wind slowly fades, the surface of the lake becomes still again. The water becomes clear, and the reflection of the sky returns. The calmness was always present in the lake. It was simply hidden by the movement on the surface. The human mind works in a similar way. Deep within your awareness, there is a natural state of calmness and clarity, but the constant movement of thoughts, worries, and desires creates waves that make it difficult to experience that inner stillness. Many people try to solve this by constantly changing their external situation. They move to new places, pursue new goals, or search for new distractions, believing that peace will appear when the circumstances are right. But the truth is that even when external problems are temporarily solved, the mind often finds new reasons to become restless again. This is because the real source of restlessness is not outside of you. It comes from the habits of the mind itself. The mind is constantly analyzing, comparing, predicting, and remembering. It jumps between past regrets and future worries. It imagines scenarios that may never happen and replays conversations that are already finished. This constant activity makes it difficult to notice the quiet awareness that already exists beneath those thoughts. The Buddha encouraged people to observe their minds carefully. He noticed that when people stopped feeding every thought with attention, the mind naturally began to settle. Just like the lake becomes calm when the wind stops disturbing it, the mind becomes peaceful when it is not constantly chasing every idea that appears. This does not mean that thoughts disappear completely. Thoughts are a natural part of being human, but when you stop identifying with every thought, they begin to lose their power over your emotions. You start to see them for what they are: temporary mental events passing through your awareness. Imagine sitting beside a busy road and watching cars drive by. If you tried to stop every car, you would quickly become exhausted. But if you simply sit and observe the traffic, the cars pass naturally without requiring your involvement. Your thoughts can be treated in the same way. When you observe them without immediately reacting, the mind gradually becomes quieter. Another important reason people struggle to find peace is because they believe peace must feel exciting or dramatic. But true peace is often quiet and subtle. It does not come with fireworks or intense emotional highs. Instead, it feels like a gentle sense of stability within yourself. It is the feeling of being present in the moment without needing anything to be different. It is the ability to sit quietly and feel comfortable with your own awareness. At first, this kind of stillness may feel unfamiliar. Many people are so used to constant stimulation that silence feels uncomfortable. The mind may try to create distractions or pull your attention back into worry or planning. But if you remain patient, you begin to notice that stillness has its own quiet beauty. You start to appreciate the simplicity of the present moment, the sound of your breath, the feeling of sitting peacefully, the quiet awareness that exists before the next thought appears. These simple moments reveal something important. Peace does not require perfection in your life. It only requires that you stop constantly fighting with the present moment. Many people believe they must eliminate every problem before they can feel calm. But life will always include challenges. New situations will appear, and unexpected changes will occur. If peace depends on the absence of problems, it will always feel temporary. But if peace comes from your relationship with the present moment, it becomes much more stable. You learn to remain centered even while life continues to change around you. This understanding is one of the most powerful aspects of Buddhist practice. Instead of trying to control every external situation, you begin focusing on developing awareness within your own mind. You learn to notice when the mind begins to chase worries or cling to expectations, and instead of following those mental patterns automatically, you gently return your attention to the present moment. This process slowly rewires the way your mind responds to life. Over time, you begin to notice something surprising. Moments of peace start appearing even during difficult periods of life. You may still experience challenges, but they no longer completely overwhelm your sense of balance. The calm awareness beneath your thoughts becomes easier to access. It becomes like a quiet space you can return to whenever the world feels noisy. The Buddha described this state as a form of inner refuge. It is not a place you travel to physically. It is a state of awareness that exists within your own mind. No matter where you are or what circumstances you face, this inner refuge is always available. But it can only be discovered when you stop searching for peace in every external direction. You discover it when you slow down enough to notice what is already present inside you. Many people spend years searching outside themselves for something that has been quietly waiting within them all along. The moment you recognize this truth, your relationship with life begins to change. You still pursue goals, build relationships, and move forward with your responsibilities. But your sense of calm is no longer dependent on whether everything goes perfectly. You carry peace with you rather than chasing it. And this quiet inner stability allows you to move through life with greater clarity, patience, and compassion. Because once you understand that peace is not something you must earn or achieve, but something that emerges when the mind becomes still, you begin to realize that the calm you have been searching for has never been far away. It has always been within you, waiting for the moment when the mind finally stops searching everywhere else. Nothing in your life is permanent, and that is a hidden blessing. One of the deepest truths that the Buddha taught is the principle of impermanence. Everything in life is constantly changing. Nothing remains exactly the same forever. At first, this idea can feel uncomfortable because the mind often desires stability and certainty. People want happiness to last forever, relationships to remain unchanged, and success to stay permanent. But life does not work that way. Everything that exists moves through cycles of change. Seasons change, people grow older, situations evolve. Even emotions that feel overwhelming today will eventually transform into something different tomorrow. The mind often struggles with this reality because it prefers control. It wants to hold on to pleasant experiences and push away painful ones. It wants life to follow a predictable pattern that feels safe and familiar. But the truth is that impermanence is not only a source of loss, it is also a source of hope. If nothing ever changed, then pain would last forever. Difficult moments would remain frozen in place, and suffering would never have the chance to dissolve. Imagine if every disappointment you experienced in your past had remained exactly as intense as it felt in that moment. Imagine if every heartbreak, every failure, and every painful memory continued to hurt you with the same force forever. Life would become unbearable. But that is not what happens. Over time, emotions soften, wounds heal, experiences that once felt overwhelming slowly become memories that no longer control your life. Impermanence allows this healing to happen. This means that the same truth that causes sadness when something good ends is also the reason painful situations eventually fade. The difficulty is that when people are inside a difficult moment, they often forget this truth. When life feels heavy, the mind begins to believe that the situation will last forever. It tells you that things will never improve, that the struggle will never end, and that your current feelings define your future. But this is only a story created by the mind. Reality is always moving forward. Think about how many moments in your life once felt permanent. There may have been times when sadness felt endless. There may have been periods when you believed things would never get better, but eventually something changed. New experiences appeared. Your perspective shifted. Time moved forward. The moment that once felt like the center of your world slowly became just one chapter within a much larger story. This is the quiet power of impermanence. It reminds us that no moment, no emotion, and no situation remains fixed forever. When you understand this deeply, your relationship with life begins to change. You stop clinging so tightly to the good moments because you understand that they are temporary. Instead of trying to freeze happiness in place, you begin to appreciate it while it exists. You enjoy the moment fully without the fear of losing it. At the same time, you stop fearing difficult moments quite as much because you recognize that they are also temporary. Even the most painful experiences are part of a moving process. They rise, they remain for a while, and eventually they fade. This understanding creates a deeper form of emotional balance. Instead of being completely controlled by every change in life, you begin to observe the flow of experiences with greater awareness. You learn to ride the waves of life rather than fighting against them. Imagine standing beside the ocean during a storm. The waves rise and crash with great force. If you tried to stop them, it would be impossible. But if you understand the nature of the ocean, you realize that storms eventually pass. The waves become smaller. The water becomes calm again. Your emotional life works in the same way. Difficult emotions may rise suddenly and feel powerful, but they are not permanent. If you allow them to move naturally without resisting them or clinging to them, they eventually dissolve. Another powerful aspect of impermanence is that it encourages personal growth. If nothing in life ever changed, you would remain exactly the same person forever. Your understanding would never expand. Your character would never evolve. But because life constantly changes, you are constantly invited to grow. Each new situation presents an opportunity to learn something about yourself. You learn how to adapt when plans shift. You learn patience when progress takes longer than expected. You learn compassion when you witness the struggles of others. Over time, these lessons shape your wisdom. The person you are today is not the same person you were 5 years ago. You have new experiences, new insights, and new strengths that did not exist before. Impermanence made that transformation possible. The Buddha encouraged people to reflect on impermanence, not as a source of fear, but as a reminder to live with greater awareness. When you remember that time is always moving forward, you become more mindful of how you spend your days. You appreciate simple moments more deeply. A conversation with a friend, a quiet walk outside, a peaceful moment of reflection. These moments may appear ordinary, but they are part of the living experience of being human, and they will not last forever. This realization encourages gratitude. Instead of constantly waiting for the future to bring happiness, you begin to notice the quiet beauty of the present moment. You recognize that life is happening right now, not only in the plans you make for tomorrow. Impermanence also softens the way you hold your worries. Many of the things people stress about eventually lose their importance. Arguments that once felt urgent become distant memories. Problems that once felt overwhelming are eventually solved or replaced by new experiences. When you remember this, the mind becomes less trapped in temporary concerns. You start asking yourself a simple question during difficult moments. Will this still matter in a year? Often the answer is no. This perspective creates space in your mind. You begin to see that life is larger than the current situation you are facing. It is a long journey filled with changing seasons. Some seasons bring joy and growth, others bring reflection and challenge, but none of them last forever. The Buddha believed that understanding impermanence helps people develop a calmer and more flexible mind. When you stop expecting life to remain fixed, you become more adaptable. You learn to move with change rather than resisting it. And this flexibility becomes a source of strength. Instead of fearing the movement of life, you begin to trust it. You understand that every ending also creates the possibility of a new beginning. Every difficult phase carries the seeds of future growth. Every challenge contains lessons that can shape your understanding. So the next time life feels uncertain or overwhelming, remember this quiet truth. Nothing in your life is permanent. The moment you are experiencing right now is only one part of a much larger flow. Just as difficult times eventually pass, new opportunities and experiences will continue to appear. Impermanence ensures that life is always moving forward, and hidden within that constant movement is the possibility of healing, transformation, and new beginnings that you may not yet be able to see. Stop carrying yesterday into today. Many people wake up each morning believing they are starting a new day, but in reality their minds are still carrying the weight of yesterday. Old mistakes, past disappointments, regrets, arguments, and painful memories quietly follow them into the present moment. The body may be moving through a new day, but the mind is still trapped inside something that has already ended. This is one of the quiet habits that creates a great deal of unnecessary suffering. The Buddha taught that most human pain is not caused only by what happens to us, but by how long we continue holding on to it in our minds. A moment of anger may last only a few minutes in reality, but the mind can replay that moment for days, months, or even years. It replays conversations that are already finished. It imagines different outcomes that can never happen. It asks questions about the past that will never receive answers. In doing this, the mind unknowingly keeps itself tied to something that no longer exists. The past is already gone. It cannot be changed, corrected, or rewritten. Yet many people continue carrying it as if they are still responsible for fixing it. Think about how often the mind returns to something that happened long ago. A mistake you made years ago may suddenly appear in your thoughts again. An embarrassing moment may still cause discomfort when you remember it. A painful conversation may still echo in your mind long after the other person has forgotten about it. Why does this happen? Because the mind has a natural habit of clinging to unfinished emotional experiences. When something happens that feels unresolved, the mind tries to revisit it again and again, hoping that by analyzing it more deeply, it will eventually find closure. But in most cases, this repeated thinking does not create clarity. Instead, it simply reopens the same emotional wound. The Buddha encouraged people to recognize that the mind's attachment to the past is one of the main reasons peace becomes difficult to experience. When the mind constantly looks backward, it cannot fully experience what is happening right now. Imagine trying to walk forward while constantly turning your head to look behind you. Eventually, you will stumble. Life requires your attention in the present moment. But when your thoughts are stuck in the past, you lose the ability to engage with the opportunities that exist today. This is why learning to release the past is not about ignoring your experiences. It is about understanding their proper place in your life. Your past is a teacher, not a prison. Every experience you have lived through contains a lesson. Mistakes reveal areas where growth is possible. Difficult moments reveal strengths that you did not know you had. But once the lesson has been learned, the experience no longer needs to be carried as a burden. The problem is that many people confuse remembering with holding on. You can remember your past without allowing it to define your present identity. For example, imagine someone who once made a serious mistake. The mind may continue repeating the story, saying, "I am the person who failed. I am the person who made that mistake." But this belief freezes the person in a single moment of time. In reality, people are constantly evolving. The person you were 5 years ago is not exactly the same person you are today. Your understanding has grown, your experiences have shaped your perspective, your awareness has expanded. If you continue defining yourself only by something that happened long ago, you deny the possibility of growth. The Buddha emphasized that identity itself is fluid and changing. You are not a fixed version of yourself. You are a process of learning and transformation. Each day offers the chance to move slightly beyond the patterns of the past. But that movement becomes difficult when the mind insists on carrying yesterday into today. Another reason people struggle to release the past is because they believe letting go means that the past was acceptable or justified. For example, if someone hurt you deeply, the mind may believe that letting go of that pain means forgiving the behavior or pretending it did not matter. But letting go does not mean approving of what happened. It means choosing not to allow the past to continue controlling your present emotional state. Holding on to anger or resentment does not change the past. It simply keeps you emotionally connected to the pain. The Buddha often described resentment as carrying a heavy stone on your back while walking through life. The person who originally caused the pain may no longer even be present, but the weight continues because you are still holding on to it. Letting go is like placing that stone on the ground. The event still exists in your memory, but you are no longer carrying its emotional weight every day. This process requires patience and awareness. The mind may return to old memories many times before it learns to release them completely. Each time the memory appears, you can gently remind yourself that the moment has already passed. You can acknowledge the experience, appreciate the lesson it offered, and then return your attention to the present. Gradually, the mind begins to understand that the past no longer requires your constant attention. This creates space for a new way of living. Instead of waking up and immediately revisiting old worries or regrets, you begin to experience the freshness of each new day. The morning becomes an opportunity rather than a reminder of yesterday's problems. The present moment becomes a place where new choices are possible. This is one of the reasons mindfulness is so important in Buddhist practice. Mindfulness teaches you to notice when the mind begins drifting into past memories or future worries. Instead of following those thoughts automatically, you gently return your attention to what is happening right now. Your breathing, the sounds around you, the sensations of the present moment. This simple act of returning to the present gradually weakens the mind's attachment to the past. Over time, the past loses its emotional grip. It becomes part of your story rather than the center of your identity. Another beautiful aspect of releasing the past is that it opens the door to gratitude. When you stop focusing only on what went wrong before, you begin to notice what is still possible today. You begin to appreciate the simple fact that life continues to offer new moments, new conversations, new ideas, new chances to act differently. Every day contains opportunities that were not available yesterday. But those opportunities can only be seen when the mind is not trapped in old memories. The Buddha believed that true freedom begins when a person learns to live fully in the present moment. Not because the past is forgotten, but because it is no longer controlling the mind. You become someone who remembers without clinging. Someone who learns without punishing yourself. Someone who allows each new day to be experienced with fresh awareness. So if your mind often returns to things that happened long ago, pause for a moment and ask yourself a gentle question. Is this memory helping me grow, or is it simply repeating pain? If it is only repeating pain, then perhaps it is time to place that memory down and allow your mind to rest. Yesterday has already finished its work. Today is a new moment that deserves your attention. And the more you learn to live in this moment rather than carrying the weight of the past, the lighter and more peaceful your journey through life will become. You do not need to have everything figured out right now. One of the quiet pressures many people carry in modern life is the belief that they must have everything figured out. The mind often feels that by a certain age, you should know exactly what your purpose is, where your life is going, what career you will follow, who you will become, and how the future will unfold. When reality does not match this expectation, anxiety begins to grow. People start to feel as if they are behind in life. They look at others who appear confident and successful and assume that everyone else has already discovered the perfect path. Meanwhile, their own path feels uncertain, unfinished, or confusing. This comparison creates a sense of urgency that pushes the mind into constant worry. But one of the most calming teachings found in Buddhist wisdom is the reminder that life is not meant to be completely understood all at once. The Buddha observed that existence itself is a process of unfolding. Just as a tree grows slowly from a seed into a plant and eventually into a towering form over many years, human understanding develops gradually through experience. No seed becomes a tree overnight, and no human being discovers every answer about their life immediately. Yet the mind often tries to rush this natural process. It demands certainty. It wants a clear map of the future. It wants guarantees that every decision will lead to the correct destination. But life rarely provides that level of clarity. The path forward usually reveals itself step by step rather than all at once. Think about how many things in your life today were once uncertain. There may have been moments when you did not know what decision to make, where your life was heading, or how a particular situation would unfold. At that time, the uncertainty may have felt uncomfortable or even frightening. But eventually, time moved forward. New experiences appeared. You learned something from each step, and slowly the path became clearer. This is the natural rhythm of life. Clarity often comes from movement rather than from waiting for perfect understanding. If you sit still waiting for every answer before taking action, you may remain stuck in the same place for years. But when you allow yourself to take small steps, even without full certainty, life begins revealing the next piece of the journey. The Buddha encouraged people to focus on the present moment rather than trying to control the entire future. When the mind constantly jumps ahead, imagining every possible outcome, it creates unnecessary stress. It tries to solve problems that do not yet exist. But when you bring your attention back to what can be done today, life becomes more manageable. Instead of trying to design the next 10 years of your life, you focus on the next step in front of you. What can you learn today? What action can you take today? How can you improve your understanding today? Each small step becomes part of a larger path that gradually reveals itself over time. Another important insight is that uncertainty is not a sign that something is wrong. Uncertainty is a natural part of being alive. Every person who has ever lived has faced moments when the future felt unclear. Even individuals who appear confident often experience doubts about their direction. The difference is that some people learn to move forward despite that uncertainty rather than waiting for perfect answers. In fact, many of the most meaningful discoveries in life happen precisely because people are willing to explore the unknown. If every path were completely predictable, life would lose its sense of exploration and discovery. Imagine reading a story where every event is already known from the beginning. The story would lose its excitement and depth. Life works in a similar way. The unknown chapters of your life are not problems to be solved immediately. They are experiences waiting to unfold. When you accept this, the pressure to control everything begins to fade. You start understanding that uncertainty does not mean you are lost. It simply means you are still in the process of discovering who you are becoming. Another reason people feel anxious about not having everything figured out is because society often celebrates quick success. Stories about people who achieved great things at a young age are widely shared. These stories can create the impression that life must follow a fast and perfectly organized timeline. But reality is far more complex. Many individuals who eventually found their true path spent years exploring different directions before discovering what truly mattered to them. Some changed careers multiple times. Some experienced failures that forced them to rethink their goals. Some spent long periods learning about themselves before they understood where their talents and passions truly belonged. Those years were not wasted. They were part of the process of self-discovery. The Buddha believed that wisdom develops through direct experience rather than through rigid plans. Life teaches you through the situations you encounter, the people you meet, and the challenges you face. Each experience adds a small piece to your understanding. Over time, these pieces begin forming a clearer picture of who you are and what direction feels meaningful. But this picture rarely appears instantly. It emerges gradually. Patience becomes essential during this process. The mind often wants immediate answers because it believes certainty will eliminate discomfort. But sometimes the discomfort of not knowing is exactly what encourages growth. When you do not have all the answers, you remain open to learning. You remain curious. You remain flexible enough to change direction when new understanding appears. This openness is far more valuable than forcing yourself into a path that does not truly fit your nature. Another helpful way to think about life is to see it as a long journey rather than a single decision. Imagine walking through a large forest. At the beginning, you cannot see the entire path. Trees block your view, and the distance ahead is hidden, but as you walk forward step by step, the path gradually reveals itself. Each turn shows you something new. Your life unfolds in the same way. You may not see the full direction today, but as long as you continue walking, the next part of the path will appear. This perspective removes the pressure to solve your entire future immediately. Instead, you focus on continuing the journey with awareness and curiosity. The Buddha also emphasized compassion toward oneself during periods of uncertainty. Many people criticize themselves harshly for not having everything figured out. They compare their progress to others and assume they are falling behind. But self-criticism does not create clarity. It only creates more anxiety. When you treat yourself with patience and understanding, the mind becomes calmer. And a calm mind is much better at discovering meaningful direction than a mind filled with pressure and doubt. You begin to realize that your life is not a race against others. It is a personal journey of growth and discovery. Some paths unfold quickly, while others require more time and reflection. Both are valid. So if you currently feel uncertain about where your life is heading, remember something important. You are not required to have every answer today. You are only required to remain present, curious, and willing to continue learning. Each experience you live through is shaping your understanding. Each challenge is teaching you something about your strengths and values. And slowly, through these experiences, the path that once seemed unclear will begin to reveal itself. Because life is not meant to be solved like a puzzle in a single moment. It is meant to be lived, explored, and discovered one step at a time. Stop measuring your life against everyone else. One of the quiet habits that steals peace from many people is the constant urge to compare their lives with the lives of others. It often begins very subtly. You see someone achieving something impressive, someone living a life that looks exciting, or someone reaching a milestone that you have not yet reached. In that moment, the mind starts creating a silent measurement. It begins asking questions that slowly disturb your peace. Why am I not there yet? Why is their life moving faster than mine? Why does it seem easier for them? These questions may seem harmless, but they slowly create dissatisfaction inside the mind. Instead of focusing on your own journey, your attention becomes fixed on someone else's path. Buddhist teachings often warn about this habit because comparison can quietly disconnect you from your own life. The Buddha observed that suffering often begins when the mind starts judging its own experience through the lens of someone else's experience. The moment you begin measuring your life against others, your sense of contentment becomes fragile. Think about how easily the mind overlooks everything that is already present in your life: your health, your experiences, the lessons you have learned, the strength you have developed through hardship. All of these things suddenly seem less valuable when you compare them to someone else's achievements. Comparison turns your attention away from your own path and places it somewhere it does not belong. But the truth is that every person is walking through life with a completely different set of circumstances. No two lives are built on the same foundation. Some people grow up with certain advantages. Others face challenges that require them to develop resilience early in life. Some people discover their passions quickly, while others need years of exploration before they find the direction that truly suits them. These differences mean that comparing one life to another is like comparing two completely different journeys. Imagine two people climbing different mountains. One mountain may have a smooth and steady path. The other may have steep slopes, rocky terrain, and unpredictable weather. If the climbers constantly compare their progress, one may feel discouraged simply because their mountain requires more effort. But the difficulty of the climb does not make the journey less meaningful. In fact, sometimes the most difficult paths create the strongest climbers. The same principle applies to life. Your journey includes experiences that are shaping your character in ways that may not be immediately visible. The challenges you face today may be strengthening your patience, your understanding, and your ability to handle life with wisdom. These qualities are far more valuable than simply reaching milestones quickly. Another important truth is that the version of someone's life you see from the outside is rarely complete. People often share their achievements, their successes, and the moments that make them appear confident or fulfilled. But they rarely share the doubts, struggles, and failures that happened behind the scenes. The mind, however, fills in the missing pieces. When you see someone succeeding, the mind may assume their journey has been smooth and easy. It imagines that they have not faced the same uncertainty or hardship that you are experiencing. But this assumption is often far from reality. Every person has moments of difficulty that others cannot see. Even individuals who appear strong and successful may carry their own private challenges. They may struggle with fear, loneliness, or self-doubt in ways that are invisible to the outside world. When you remember this, comparison begins to lose its power. Instead of seeing someone else's progress as evidence that you are behind, you begin to see it simply as part of their unique path. Your path remains your own. The Buddha encouraged people to focus on understanding their own mind rather than constantly observing the lives of others. When your attention is directed inward, you begin to notice the patterns that shape your thoughts and emotions. You learn what motivates you, what drains your energy, and what brings genuine peace into your life. This self-awareness becomes far more valuable than trying to keep pace with someone else's journey. Another reason comparison creates suffering is because it keeps the mind trapped in a cycle of dissatisfaction. Even if you achieve something meaningful, the mind may immediately find someone who has achieved more. Instead of appreciating your progress, it begins searching for another standard that makes you feel inadequate again. This cycle never ends because there will always be someone who appears to have more success, more wealth, or more recognition. But peace does not come from winning this endless competition. Peace comes from stepping outside of it entirely. When you stop measuring your life against others, something beautiful begins to happen. Your attention returns to your own experiences. You begin noticing the progress you have made rather than the progress someone else has made. You begin appreciating the lessons that your own life is teaching you. Your sense of fulfillment becomes connected to growth rather than comparison. The Buddha believed that true happiness arises from understanding and accepting your own path. This does not mean that you stop learning from others or feeling inspired by their achievements. Inspiration can be healthy and motivating. But inspiration is different from comparison. Inspiration encourages you to grow in ways that align with your own values. Comparison, on the other hand, makes you feel that your life must look exactly like someone else's in order to be meaningful. The moment you release that belief, your mind becomes lighter. You begin to realize that life is not a race with a single finish line. It is a journey of discovery. Some people will travel quickly through certain stages. Others will move slowly and thoughtfully through those same stages. Both journeys have value. The important thing is not how fast you move, but how deeply you understand the path you are walking. Another powerful shift happens when you begin celebrating the success of others without feeling threatened by it. When comparison disappears, the achievements of others no longer feel like competition. Instead, they become reminders of what is possible in the human experience. You can feel genuine happiness for someone else's progress while still appreciating your own journey. This mindset creates emotional freedom. Instead of constantly evaluating yourself against others, you focus on becoming a wiser and more compassionate version of yourself. Each day becomes an opportunity to grow slightly beyond who you were yesterday. You develop patience with your own process. You understand that some lessons require time. And most importantly, you begin living your life from a place of awareness rather than from the pressure of comparison. So if you ever find your mind drifting into the habit of measuring your life against someone else's, pause for a moment. Take a breath and gently remind yourself that your journey is uniquely yours. The path you are walking has its own rhythm, its own challenges, and its own discoveries waiting to unfold. You do not need to match anyone else's timeline. You only need to continue growing, learning, and moving forward at the pace that allows you to live with awareness and peace. Because the moment you stop measuring your life against everyone else is the moment you finally begin to experience the quiet freedom of living your own life fully. Even the darkest moments are teaching you something. There are times in life when everything feels heavy, moments when the mind becomes tired, the heart feels discouraged, and the future looks uncertain. During these periods, it is easy to believe that nothing good can come from what you are experiencing. The mind often sees pain as meaningless, as if it is simply an obstacle that should never have appeared. But one of the deeper insights found in Buddhist wisdom is that even the darkest moments in life carry lessons that can transform the way you understand yourself and the world. This does not mean that pain is something to celebrate or seek out. Suffering is part of life, and it is natural to want relief from it. However, the Buddha encouraged people to look more carefully at their struggles. When observed with awareness, difficult experiences often reveal truths that comfort and success cannot teach. Think about how human understanding develops. Most of the time, people grow the most when they are forced to face something uncomfortable. When everything is easy and predictable, the mind tends to remain on the surface of life. It moves through routines without questioning much about the deeper nature of existence. But when hardship appears, something shifts. Difficult moments force you to pause. They make you reflect. They encourage you to ask questions that may never have arisen during comfortable times. Questions like, what truly matters in my life? What am I holding on to that is causing my suffering? What kind of person do I want to become after this experience? These questions often become the beginning of wisdom. Many people look back on the hardest chapters of their lives and realize that those moments shaped them more deeply than any period of comfort ever did. A painful loss may teach you the value of compassion. A failure may reveal the importance of persistence. A period of loneliness may help you understand the importance of self-acceptance. At the time these experiences happen, they rarely feel meaningful. They simply feel painful. But with time and reflection, their lessons become clearer. The Buddha often explained that suffering has the potential to awaken awareness. When life is difficult, the mind begins to search for understanding. It begins to look beyond surface-level distractions and explore deeper truths about existence. One of those truths is that life cannot always be controlled. The mind naturally tries to organize life into predictable patterns. It wants certainty. It wants events to follow a plan that makes sense. But life often moves in unexpected directions. People leave when you thought they would stay. Opportunities disappear when you thought they were guaranteed. Plans collapse even when you worked hard to build them. These moments reveal something important about the nature of life. They show that attachment to certainty can become a source of suffering. When you believe that life must follow a specific path, every unexpected change feels like a disaster. But when you understand that change is part of the natural flow of existence, difficult moments begin to feel less like personal attacks and more like opportunities to adapt. This shift in perspective does not remove pain completely, but it allows you to move through pain with greater awareness. Another important lesson that often emerges from dark moments is the discovery of inner strength. Many people underestimate their resilience because they have never been tested by serious hardship. They believe they would collapse under pressure, that they are not strong enough to endure certain challenges. But when life places them in difficult situations, they often discover abilities they did not know they possessed. They find patience where they thought there was none. They find courage in moments when fear once controlled them. They find determination even when everything around them feels uncertain. This strength does not appear suddenly out of nowhere. It develops through the process of facing hardship and continuing to move forward. Every time you survive a difficult moment, your understanding of yourself changes slightly. You begin to realize that you are capable of enduring more than you once believed. Another lesson that dark moments often teach is empathy. When you experience pain personally, your perspective toward others begins to soften. You realize that many people around you are carrying struggles that are invisible from the outside. A person who appears confident may be fighting silent fears. A person who appears successful may be facing private challenges. A person who appears calm may be working hard to overcome emotional storms within their own mind. This awareness creates compassion. Instead of judging others quickly, you begin to understand that everyone is walking through their own version of difficulty. And this compassion becomes one of the most powerful forms of wisdom. The Buddha believed that suffering could open the heart as much as it opens the mind. When you face pain with awareness, you begin to recognize the shared human experience that connects all people. Another valuable lesson from difficult moments is patience. Modern life often encourages instant results. People expect quick solutions to problems and immediate clarity about their future. But deep transformation rarely happens quickly. Just as a seed needs time to grow into a tree, personal growth requires patience. The lessons hidden inside painful experiences often unfold slowly. At first, you may not understand why something happened. You may feel confused or frustrated. But as time passes, the experience begins to reveal its meaning. You notice how it changed your perspective. You notice how it strengthened your character. You notice how it prepared you for situations that came later in life. Without that earlier hardship, you might not have been ready to handle future challenges with wisdom. This realization often brings a sense of gratitude for experiences that once seemed unbearable. You begin to see that life was shaping you rather than simply hurting you. The Buddha encouraged people to observe their suffering with curiosity rather than immediate resistance. Instead of asking only, "Why is this happening to me?" he suggested asking, "What can this experience teach me about life?" This question shifts your relationship with pain. Instead of seeing suffering as something meaningless, you begin to view it as part of a process that can deepen your understanding. Not every difficult experience has an obvious lesson immediately. Some moments simply require patience and healing before their meaning becomes visible. But when you approach hardship with openness rather than bitterness, you create the possibility for growth. Even the darkest moments contain seeds of transformation. They challenge your assumptions. They strengthen your resilience. They deepen your compassion. And they guide you toward a more mature understanding of life. So, if you are currently walking through a period that feels heavy or confusing, remember something important. This moment is not the end of your story. It is part of the journey that is shaping who you are becoming. The lessons may not be clear right now, but with time, awareness, and patience, even the darkest moments can become the teachers that help you grow into a wiser, stronger, and more compassionate version of yourself. If life feels heavy right now, pause for a moment and breathe. You are not alone in feeling this way. Every human being, no matter how strong or successful they appear on the outside, eventually walks through moments when the mind feels tired and the heart feels uncertain. These moments are not signs that your life is failing. They are part of the human journey. The Buddha taught that life will always contain both light and darkness, joy and pain, clarity and confusion. None of these experiences stay forever. Everything moves, changes, and transforms with time. When you understand this, something inside you begins to relax. You stop expecting life to be perfect. You stop blaming yourself for every difficult moment. And slowly, you begin to trust the process of life itself. The pain you feel today will not last forever. The confusion you feel today will not define your entire future. The struggles you are facing right now may actually be shaping a stronger, wiser version of you. Sometimes the hardest days are the ones quietly preparing you for the greatest growth. Remember the truths you discovered through these lessons. Pain is part of life, but suffering grows when the mind fights reality. Your thoughts are not always the truth. Your life does not need to be perfect to be meaningful. Your value does not decrease because you are going through a difficult chapter, and the peace you are searching for has always existed within you. You do not need to solve your entire life today. You only need to take the next step. Breathe. Be patient with yourself. Allow life to unfold one moment at a time. Because even when you cannot see the full path ahead, every small step forward is still progress. And one day, you may look back at this difficult period and realize that it was the moment when your understanding deepened, your strength grew, and your perspective began to change. So if you are feeling down today, remember this simple truth. You are still here. You are still learning. You are still becoming. And sometimes that quiet perseverance is the greatest victory